Well, what if you're God and you come here to this incredible place you created called planet Earth, and you walk up to one of your creations and you say, hey, creation, how you liking this thing I created for you? And the person says, God, I'm glad you showed up because I got a bone to pick with you. First of all, why do you make it so effing hot all the time? And then you make these stupid people that get in my way and interfere with what I'm trying to accomplish. Why wouldn't you make everybody nice and connected? You make these little red ants, they bite my I mean, why would you create such a thing if you're God? And then God goes to one of his other creations and says, how are you liking this place? And they say, oh God, thank God you're here. I've always wanted to thank you directly. This is the most amazing paradise. It's so unbelievable. First of all, you never get bored because you're always changing the temperature. It's so amazing. You bring so many people to challenge me to grow. And you made these little red ants. Man, these things are courageous. They're 1/1,000,000th my size and they bite my It's amazing. Now the question is, if you were God, who do you want to hang out with, the first person or the second one?
Wow.
So I tell people, say, if there is no God, I say, there's God. You just so much, he doesn't want to hang out with you.
I'm just playing, I don't fight, I do pray. I only go the way of Mr. Yahweh.
It's not often I sit down with somebody and they say something that makes me think.
Bro,
this was great.
I love you guys.
But you give me something to think about.
My own damn way.
I had a lot of fun on this interview. What's up, guys? Welcome back to the George Janko Show. Today we have the leader amongst leaders, Tony Robbins. And there's two things that you guys should stay tuned for. One, the Time to Rise Summit. That's actually around the corner. It's something you guys are going to want to check out. Second, his book, The Holy Grail of Investing. I literally had him sign this and give it to me because I'm truly taking this home. I hope you guys enjoyed today's interview, and let's get into it. Welcome back. I'm just going to jump right into this. I'm super excited about this. And by the way, you have such a contagious smile.
What's that?
You have such a contagious smile.
Well, you're just crying a few minutes ago.
No, don't say that. You said we literally said we were going to talk about that.
I hope you know if you make me cry, I'm cutting it out. Walters at that point. This part's going to be cut. This part's going to be cut.
I'm cutting all. If I start crying, I'm cutting all of it. Like, you got me so emotional. He said, "Come talk to me before we." Just like
Good to be with you again, George.
It's such a pleasure. A lot of people do intros and they'll talk about. They'll talk about all your exciting things that you're happening, but I have a personal one that I wanted to talk to you about. When I first met you, we were shooting Impulsive, and I was at your house, and
yeah.
It was the first time in my life that I ever met somebody that I was like, I would be blessed if I was half the man that you are.
Oh, you're overstating that massively, but thank you for the kind words.
Truly, I'm not. And I'll tell you why. I walked around, and you could tell who a man is by his surroundings. And from Billy to Rob to Casey to every single person you have around are so unbelievably joyful and peaceful to be around.
Yeah.
And I got a second to meet your wife, and after we were done, you were showing me your slide and all of the trophies and the gym and then the bunker that you had. And we're walking around. I'm looking at, I thought it was an ocean, but it's the pool. And I sat there and I was like, you figured it out at such a level where there's a prayer that I've been saying now. When I was a child, I used to be like, God, use me for something great.
Yes, that's my prayer before I go on stage every time.
And I feel like both of us have gotten at least to a place where we have done something for God and his works here. And when I sat there, there's this prayer where I go, I don't want to be great in mankind's eyes. I want to be great in your eyes. Mm-hmm. And I want him to look down from heaven with all of the greats that are from the Bible and be like, that's our guy. And when I met you, I can't imagine what it feels like to be anywhere near the accomplishments that you have done for other people. When you look up at the stars, right, you see a bunch of stars, but there's always one that's so much brighter than the rest of them. And I truly feel that's how you look like from heaven.
You might as well cut off now after that introduction.
Yeah, dude.
You're beyond kind, but I am very blessed, and I think it takes both. I don't have the delusion that it's me. I know that things come through, you want to serve something more than yourself. That sounds trite to some people, but it's really real for me. My prayer before I go on stage, every time I have this physical set of motions and things I do with my body to get myself ready so I can explode on stage and hold 20,000 people for 12 hours a day for 5, 6, 7 days in a row when they won't sit for a 3-hour movie somebody spent $300 million to do. But my prayer always before I end is, use me, Lord. And I then visualize the impact of where people will be when we're done. And so I've been really blessed. And I've also had the privilege of doing this. This is going to be my 47th year. How old are you?
31.
Okay, so I've been doing this 16 years longer than you've been alive, to give you an idea. So I could be an idiot at this point, and I'd have to notice there are patterns that make the difference in the quality of a person's life, in their spirit, and their heart, and their body, and their emotions, and their business, and their careers. And hopefully, if you keep growing and you're trying to serve something more than yourself, you're inspired. I really believe life supports whatever supports more of life. God, the universe, so everyone has different beliefs. Mine personally is God, but supports something that supports more. In other words, if you get a desire, desire, right? Latin means of the Father. So if you have a desire, you already have the ability to fulfill it. But certain desires will meet your needs and you're part of life, and so you get insights for that. But then suddenly when I married a woman who had been married twice before me and had children from both of them, and I adopted them as my own, all of a sudden I was 24 and had a 17-year-old son, an 11-year-old daughter, a 5-year-old, and one on the way. I don't know, there was a different level. I need to serve something even more. Then I'm trying to serve community. I'm not talking about virtue signaling. I'm talking about what you know in your soul. When you know you're trying to serve something more than yourself, you get insights that are indescribable. And they've come to me at all the right times when I've needed to be able to serve people over decades. And so, 47 years, my 47th year of doing this, I just feel so blessed. And the people you described are the greatest blessing in my life. My family and my chosen family, the ones I surround myself with, are just beautiful souls. And we're all on a mission, and our mission is really to have people have the most extraordinary life possible. And that means life on their terms, not mine, whatever they want. And they want to be closer to God. They want to build a beautiful family. They want to build a business. They want to transform their body. They want to move to a different economic level. I've been obsessed with finding answers for my whole life and having tools that really work. But it's guided by the spirit of service, and people feel that. If they think it's phony when they get with me for 12 hours a day, you can't fake that, day after day. And then that's how you win people over, because you're not trying to win them over to you. You're trying to win them over to what's really possible for them and put a plan together for it. And so I'm very, very grateful. So thank you for all those kind words. They feel a little over the top to me. But I should have accomplished something after this many years, right?
No, absolutely not. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Thank you.
The first thing before we even get into, because I have so much stuff that I would love to learn from you. I'm sitting here as a student. I'm not sitting here as an interviewer. Like I'm taking the moment, and also, God willing, that whoever's watching this could take this as well. You went from being an 11-year-old boy, who's hungry on Thanksgiving, watching your father slam the door on somebody's faces, trying to feed his family, to being in a helicopter, thinking that the people that are coming to your event is going to be stuck because of the traffic, but then you realize that the traffic is the people that are coming to your event. Yes. Going there to feeding 1 billion people and nailing it 2 years before it was even scheduled. You went from, respectfully, the bottom all the way to the top. Now, I know that is from the grace of God.
I agree.
But who was your Tony? Who was the man that opened your spirit up and molded you into the man who's going to mold many men?
I think it's never one thing besides God. I don't think it's any one thing. I had so many great mentors along the way. I had a mother that was very volatile, but also really beautiful. I wouldn't be who I am without her. But when she drank alcohol and took prescription drugs, Valium, she got very, very violent. And I had a younger brother, 5 years younger, and a younger sister, 7 years younger. And I had to be able to become a practical psychologist to be able to manage her states so she didn't get violent. And I was 5'1" in high school. I always tell people the difference. I'm 6'7" now. I say it's personal growth that made that happen, right? But I grew 10 inches a year because of a tumor. But before that, I was really small. My mom was small. And plus, it was kind of getting trained. You did whatever she said. And she would get crazy and pour liquid soap down my throat till I threw up, or because she said I was lying, and I wasn't. And when somebody you love is trying to harm you, it does a weird thing into your head. But at the same time, I just felt guided to know that, look, all this is for a deeper reason. I don't know what it is. I had no clue, but I do now. I mean, it made me that practical psychologist, and those skills just grew and grew and grew. And so along the way, I had some great teachers. I met a man when I was 17 by the name of Jim Rohn. I first took a speed reading class because I was so obsessed with finding a way to learn. I always wanted to learn anything I could, especially something that could help people. Was this when you were a janitor? Yeah, I was a janitor. It was when I was literally in junior high school and high school. I worked as a janitor because our family was very poor. We didn't have enough money for food a lot of times. And that's why at 11, we got fed at Thanksgiving. And that was probably the first huge breakthrough for me. I always loved people, but I think when somebody who didn't even want credit fed my family, it made me believe strangers care. My father, I had 4 different fathers, and my 4th father always said, no one gives a damn, and it looked that way where we lived. It certainly felt that way. But then it's like I had this pure evidence that somebody cared about our family, doesn't even know who we are, and they looked out for this way. And if strangers care about me, I care about strangers. So that was, I think, the first step. The second step was just wanting answers because I wanted to get out of that environment. There was nothing like that. And so I started reading as the solution. I could read Emerson's essays, As a Man Thinketh, anything that would project me. I read biographies and autobiographies, and that helped me too because I saw some of the most incredible people in the world had incredibly rough lives, but that didn't stop them. And so it gave me a model in my head of what was possible. And then, combination of guidance and prayer, and then I'd meet these people along the way because I think everybody's journey is the hero's journey. If you look at all the stories, the hero's journey, what happens? Your life is a certain way, and maybe you're somewhat comfortable or bored, and then something comes along and challenges you. You get diagnosed with a tumor in your brain. I've had that experience. You lose a mother or father or all of them, which I've buried them all. I've gone through that experience. You get somebody who, you thought is your friend who betrays you. You have a financial issue. There's so many things that come up, but that challenge comes for a purpose. And the purpose is, I believe, the universe and God calling you to go on the journey, on an adventure to discover who you really are, to find the deeper parts of yourself so you have something more to share and contribute to people. And so when that call comes, if you are willing to go on the journey, if you don't sit there and just give up or complain or come up with excuses, then you have to step into the unknown. And I stepped into the unknown. I had no net, and I put myself on the line to do things that seemed crazy. I'd get up and challenge psychologists and psychiatrists and give me your worst patient. I'll handle them in less than an hour and produce the result when they've worked on it for 7 years with a snake phobia. And I pulled it off. I learned skills and I pulled it off. And then all of a sudden people are coming to me for everything, or going to the U.S. Army and saying to the general there, I can take any training program in the Army, cut it in half, and increase the competency. And he said, you're crazy. I said, no, I'm expensive. And we negotiated.
Crazy expensive.
But what I made a deal was I get nothing unless I produce the result, right? So I had no net. Do you follow me? So when you go on a journey like that, and you put yourself on the line where you can't afford to fail, you don't usually. Usually the human psyche and spirit finds a way, especially if it's trying to serve something bigger. And so as I did that, I met new people. I had great new teachers. So I started with this man, Jim Rohn, when I was 17. I worked for a man, I had 3 jobs. I'm still in high school at the time. And my father said, this guy used to be such a loser, and now he's so successful. And this is the late 70s. He's buying houses in Orange County, California, and fixing them and flipping them, right? So that looked like wealth to me, right? So he needed somebody to help move stuff. He was trying to do it as cheaply as possible. So I volunteered and got paid. And I worked super hard. And so the guy took me to lunch. He goes, man, you're the strongest, hardest worker. You got the best work ethic. You got a great attitude. I said, well, I want to interview you. I'd like to ask you a couple questions. And he goes, okay. I said, my dad said you used to be such a loser, and now you're so successful. I wasn't trying to say anything that only a kid can do this, right? And he said, your dad said,
how'd you do it, dude? How'd you do it?
But I really wanted to know because I wanted to know the pathway, right? I was always looking for the path.
How did he take that?
At first, your father said, what? And then he kind of laughed and said, well, it's probably pretty true, And he said, well, it started by me going to a seminar. And I said,
wow.
What's a seminar?
Now I'm figuring it out.
Yeah, I go, what's a seminar? He goes, it's where this man who's super successful over decades, he takes all the best of what he's learned and he teaches it to you like in an evening, like 3.5, 4 hours, or a weekend, if you go for his longer programs. And it can save you a decade or two. And I was like, wow, I've never even heard of such a thing. I said, could you get me in? And he said, yeah. But he didn't have any follow-up. So I said, well, will you? And he said, no. I said, well, what do you mean? You just said I'm a great worker. He goes, because if you don't pay for it, you won't value it. I said, look, man, I make $40 a week as a janitor. I'm here working for you. I'm going to school. I'm supporting my family. I said, if you can get me in, it would help. He goes, no. I said, well, how much is it? He said, $35. Now, $35 would be like $250 now, to give you an idea with inflation. So it was a week's pay, basically, speak for me.
I bet if you asked him in a nicer way, he probably would have paid that.
Maybe I didn't call him a loser up front.
My dad thought you were a piece of shit. How'd you get the dough, man? Hey, guys, just a reminder that the merch is out for a few more days. So if you haven't got a chance to go to theheartofdavid.co, go ahead and click the link in my description, or you could shop on YouTube. Thank you guys so much, and I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the podcast.
But But I took the money. I thought it was the biggest decision of my life. And I went and sat in this seminar. I drove up my 1968 Volkswagen Baja Bug that exploded when I turned it off and handed the keys to the valet and went to this business seminar with a blue leisure suit I got at the thrift store and fake gold chains. I was going to make this happen. And I sat in this room with all these older people, and he was talking, and I'd read so many of these books. I took this reading course. I was trying to read a book a day. I didn't, but I read 700 books in 7 years. I'd read a lot by that time.
Almost like Cat Williams.
Yeah, right. And then I'm finishing his sentences, and so then I eventually got the chance to go to work for him. And I went to work and I learned to give speeches because I really believed in what he was doing. And then it just grew. Then I eventually got exposed to what's called neurolinguistic programming. Some of your audience may have heard of NLP. In the 70s, it was the breakthrough when it comes to creating change. And you could learn how to eliminate a phobia in less than an hour, not 7 years. And I, unlike the therapists who had to unlearn what they learned, I convinced this man, John Grinder, to let me come in the class. I said, I'm not like them. I'll just take what you do and run with it. Man, I'll make it happen. And I was literally putting my ear to the door at the Holiday Inn by the LAX. So he finally said, I'm going to charge you. Come on in and do it. So I went through the 6 months training and I learned these tools. And then I got on radio up in Canada. That's how my career really launched. And I'll shut the heck up and give you a picture. And this, I didn't know it was a shock jock show. In those days, there weren't many shock jocks.
If you don't mind, what is that?
It's the, like your morning group that's, like Howard Stern kind of thing, where they try to kind of mess with you quite a bit. And so I was young, I didn't know. I get on the show, I'm so excited to be on a radio show. And he starts kind of attacking me, and then he brings this psychiatrist on. And I've been talking about, I can wipe out any phobia. You come see me, I don't care what the problem is. 1 hour, I am the one-stop therapist. I'll handle it, right? And so sure enough, people calling up, can you do this, can you do that? Yes, And then the psychiatrist calls up and he says, you're a charlatan, you're a liar. People like you should not be allowed on the radio. And I paused, and I'm a nice guy, but if you punch me in the face, you're a fighter. I'm from the streets. I'm going to punch you twice as hard back, but I try to be elegant. And I said, well, sir, let me ask you a question. I said, are you a scientist? He said, of course, I'm a physician. I said, great. So if you're a scientist, you would never make an assumption. You'd want to have a way to test the hypothesis.
Yeah, an educated guess.
Yes. I said, so your hypothesis is I'm a charlatan and a liar because you've never seen someone get results so rapidly. So I said, the best way to test your hypothesis is for me to work with one of your patients. I said, why don't you, I'm doing a free seminar at the Holiday Inn 2 nights from now, announced it, right? Got it out there for everybody. And I said, why don't you give me one of your worst patients, someone you've never been able to cure? I said, I'm sure you have plenty of those. There's this long pause.
Damn, Bob. 1, 2, bro.
And he goes, and I said, and I'll turn him around. He goes, well, I can't make my patients do this. I said, well, don't you have patients that like to try something new? I said, you're attacking me. Why don't we test it? This long pause. I go, well, I do have this one woman, she has this snake phobia. She goes to sleep at night and she dreams that a snake bites her on the face. I don't know if you've had dreams like that. They're so vivid, your adrenaline pops out and she'd wake up. And this would happen sometimes 3 or 4 times a night. And I said, well, how long have you been treating her? And he said, 7 years. And I said, well, bring her down. That should take me 10 or 15 minutes, And I kept a straight face. And the guy's like, ah! And the radio guy cuts him off, says, see you tomorrow night at the Holiday Inn. So this is where my career really takes off because I show up, and in those days, I was hoping to have like 50 people show up for a free event. 550 plus people show up.
Yeah, no shit. I would show up. I'd be like, I got to see if this guy does this.
That's what they want to see, the shootout between me and the psychiatrist.
Oh, so the psychiatrist shows up too.
Yes.
Oh, this is a fucking show, bro.
He's going to come there, right? So in those days, I don't have anybody introduce me. I'm brand new, so I'm looking around, and I don't know what this guy looks like. I don't know his name. He didn't tell me his name. So I'm picturing like a guy with a scared woman on his arm, like freaking out or something. And nobody, I don't know, when you hear somebody's voice, do you do what I do? I can't help it. If I haven't met them, I make a picture of what they look like.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, so I got this picture of this giant guy, scared woman. I'm looking around the room, nobody's there. It's time to start. So I thought, he didn't show up, so I get up. I say, good evening, I'm Tony Robbins. I said, I'm here tonight to show you how you can make changes in minutes. You probably thought it would take months or years or decades. That's a big claim. And just as I say it, the side door bursts open like a movie. You couldn't make this shit up. And this guy about this tall, he's like,
hey, what do you got about that? Why did you bring up his height?
Just testing you. But he's like, he walks up and I'm standing on the stage. It's not a big stage, right? He's this little guy with this woman wrapped around his arm. And he just goes, and I wanted to shake his hand. He wouldn't shake my hand. He goes, here's the woman. Then he walks off. So I said, man, why don't you come up? I had a chair there. I had to sit in the chair. And I said, well, how many of you heard me on the radio the night? Everybody raised their hands. That's why they were there, right? And I said, well, this is the woman in question. I said, ma'am, I understand that you've worked with this man for 7 years. And she said, yeah. And I said, okay. And your problem is you have a phobia to snakes. And I screamed it. And if you've ever seen a phobic response, it's not conscious. It's an uncontrollable response to something. So she starts shaking and spitting and people are freaking out. And I just broke her pattern. And I said, okay, we're going to handle this right now. And I did this. It wasn't my technique. It's technique I learned from NLP. But I was willing to put myself on the line. That was the secret. Burn my bridges, right? So I had to succeed. And sure enough, it took me about 15, 20 minutes. And people are watching. And I did the process. I said, okay, now let's give it a test. How do you feel about snakes? And I yell snakes. No move. And I said, how do you feel? She goes, I feel really calm. I said, okay, just 1 second. And I walk behind. And on the desk back behind me, I have a bag.
No.
I swear to God. And I come in, and it was just a little gardener snake, but the audience sees the bag is moving, right? So they're already anticipating. Her back is to me. And I go, how do you feel about, and I put the snake in her face, about this far away, not in her face, literally. And she goes, oh, she starts to do that for a second. I said, okay, just let's stay with it, right? And then everything that changed in her body, this change in her nervous system that I created, was a simple technique. She calmed down, she's staring at this snake. She couldn't even think of a snake before. And I said, how do you feel about snakes? And she goes, they're not very attractive. And I said,
this is
they're
a
not
show,
supposed
bro.
to be. It was a show. It's what launched me. And I said, well, would you be willing to hold it? She goes, they're not very attractive. I said, look, you were shaking out of control thinking of a snake. Now there's one in front of you. You may not find it attractive, but you're not shrieking, you're not shrieking, you're not spitting. She's like, oh, she goes, I don't know. And the audience starts going, hold it, hold it, hold it, you know? And so she grabs the snake, starts to squeeze it. I said, don't kill it. It's this little tiny snake.
No, she's like, no, I must kill it.
Anyway, long story short, true story. At the end of that, I found my tool. I found how to get people's attention and prove what I did was real. And so then I stepped doing these free guest events, and I did everything you can imagine. I got people off some drugs and smoking, and I had a woman had not had an orgasm in 10 years, gave an orgasm without touching her, of course. And I had guys coming up to me going, could you teach me how to do that when I'm tired? You know?
Wait, if you don't mind me asking. We'll talk about that off camera, but like, what the hell? How do you even lead up with that? How do you even talk about that? Men, I know you have problems with your women, but you don't even have to touch them. What happened to the therapist?
Oh, he just turned red, and at the end, he couldn't believe it. He did not apologize or anything of that nature. You know, for the last several decades, to be fair, I was a young kid full of piss and vinegar, and I hated people going to a therapist over and over again for the same effing problem when I knew it could be changed much quicker. It's like you wouldn't have a phone from 15 years ago. It was a real phone. That's all you had. You'd be an idiot, right? Or a computer. They've not updated the technology in most forms of psychology and psychiatry. They're doing stuff from 150 years ago still. So I felt pretty intense, and so I didn't have a good interaction with him to a certain extent, to be fair.
I mean, you took a long-term client.
But at the same time, now I've trained people they study my work and they get credits to be a therapist today. So it's kind of grown. I train therapists around the world at this stage. But it went from that to, okay, working with some great athletes and turning them around. I had a guy that wasn't supposed to make the team in the LA Olympics, and he not only made the team, but won the gold medal, and that built my reputation. And then next thing I know, I'm working with Gorbachev, and I got Mother Teresa and Nelson Mandela and Bill Clinton and sports teams, and it just grew and grew. And then all this was because I understood, and I want your audience to understand, if there's something inside of you that you don't like, a behavior, an emotion, a thought, it's not you. There's nothing wrong with you. It's a pattern. And we can develop patterns and do them so often that we think we're our patterns. It's just a habit of thinking, habit of motion. You don't overeat every moment. You overeat when you're bored and when you're pissed off or when you're worried, right? It's a pattern. And you can change any pattern when you stop thinking there's something wrong with you. But also, I've learned that anybody that's great at anything, you're an actor, I understand you do music, I didn't know that before, comedian, podcast, you are great at patterns or you wouldn't be successful. If somebody's a great musician, they know certain patterns. Now, how do you get there? 3 skills. First skill you got to do is you got to recognize patterns, because otherwise things seem random. And it's overwhelming. Like the world seems random, like, oh my God, it's the worst time to be alive. It's such bullshit. I show people, like, they go, it's the worst time in the world politically, for example. There's so much hate. I can show you the postcards that were used that were posted by the two of the founding fathers, Adams and Jefferson. And if you read what they said, it makes Trump and Biden and everybody around them sound like they're the nicest people in the world. I mean, it's cyclical. We go through cycles, right? Just like seasons. So once you recognize a pattern, you can run a business. Once you recognize a pattern, you can know what's going on in the stock market. You can be a better investor. Once you recognize a pattern, you know what to do with your body for more energy. Recognize a pattern, you can decipher how to make a relationship work. But the first skill is recognizing. The second skill is learning to use it. And when you look at somebody who's masterful, pick any subject, in that area, in that domain, they know the best patterns, they know how to use it. Now you start, let's say you're gonna play the piano, by playing somebody else's patterns because they figured it out.
Yeah.
And then as you do that long enough, there gets to a point where you learn how to use it, and then you get to the third stage where you create your own patterns.
Yeah.
And that's when you become kind of the master of your particular domain, whatever it is you're really good at that, if you do it long enough and strong enough. So once I understood that, I started doing that with businesses. I realized business is a pattern. There's certain things that make them go, certain things that make, and so then I started building them. I started one business and I was overwhelmed, and then two, and I did things that I really just thought changed the quality of people's lives, businesses I felt passionate about. And now I've got 114 companies who do $7 billion in business, and I couldn't even run one before. And it's all just because I know those patterns. So what I do is teach people those patterns. Help them understand the patterns that control them so they can change. Help them understand the patterns of something they want to master, their body, their emotion, their business. And once you know them, it's like you know the pathway to get from where you are to where you want to be. Then it just comes down to doing the hard work, because it's hard work. There's no way around the hard work part. But it's fun when you get momentum. And it's easier. It's like easier to succeed when you have momentum than it is to fail. And so that's been my life's work. So I'm now, 47 years into this, and I worked in every country in the world, 195 countries, and I have the most blessed life because I can go anywhere in the world, and I've helped so many millions of people that I get so much love, because when you pour out love like that, and you really deliver for decades and always up your game, you touch a lot of lives. And I've had people grow up with me. I remember when people started recognizing me, like, you're that guy. And then I had those infomercials for a while. I'm like, you're that real estate guy. No. Oh, you're Tony Robbins. Oh, you changed my life. Oh, now people come and go, I've been listening to you since, I was 25, and they're like 50 years old. Have they been around that long? I guess so. The answer is yes. So it's a beautiful, beautiful experience. But I share the story because you ask it, but I want you to know it wasn't a straight line. There's so many ups and downs along the way. If you see a straight line in nature, it wasn't made by God, it was made by a human, right? Because real living things go up and down. Now, if they keep growing, the up and down leads to something greater. And fortunately, I've not given up and pursued that and been guided and had, a lot of grace in my life along with the hard work.
I remember being in your house and you made a joke. You go, I always wanted a trophy and rings. I just took a different route. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, what the hell? I go, you trained Serena Williams, Conor McGregor, 4 presidents. You have all of these leaders. You're the leader that the leaders go to for advice. And I'm not even blowing smoke up your ass. This is legit what people say about you.
Yeah.
How do you take great people and make them even greater than they are? Because now they're performing at a high level.
Yeah.
Did you have that same mindset with the man who's unfortunate with the champions?
Well, yes, I think, people come to me in one of two extremes. They're the best in the world at what they do. And why do they come to me? Because someone who's the best in the world is always, they know if I make a little 10-degree shift here and I go this direction, or I make this 10-degree shift this direction, I go out a week from now, a month from now, 6 months from now, a year from now, I have a different destination, different destiny, different impact. So the best in the world know a little thing can change everything, and they want to know those. And I've been obsessed. I'm an obsessive person. I've been obsessed for 47 years with asking the question, what makes the difference in the quality of people's lives? What makes the difference in the quality of their performance? Because it's not your background. Like, I used to think when I was growing up poor, we had no money, and my fourth father, and like, what's wrong here? And I remember thinking, well, it's like those people are lucky and we're just not. But the truth of the matter is, you see people that had the worst background whatsoever, and they just made different decisions. They just kept moving forward, right? So for me, when I look at people, the best come to me because they want to keep getting better. And the other time people come to me is when they're hungry. And what I mean by hungry is, if you see my audience, it's every color, every background, every age group, every country in the world. What do they have in common? It's not demographics. It's a psychographic of wanting more. And so you might want more because you just went through a divorce. You might more because you just had a birthday with a 0 on it, or maybe after 30, a 5 or a 0 on it. You start reevaluating your life a little bit. You might do it because you lost your job or something happened to the business. So pain can trigger that hunger. And some people, that's not pain. They're just hungry to be more, do more, and give more. That's my audience. I'm not for somebody in the lukewarm middle. They're not going to come in and go work day and night with me for 3 or 4 days and go, well, why do all this crap? It's not worth it. So that's not my audience. But when someone's in pain or someone has drive, that's my audience. That's people I serve. And so to answer your question, when somebody's great, I find the little things that take them next level, or if they've had it like an athlete and they're having a slump, I go back and find it. Or a financial trader, I find out what were they doing at their best, in their head, in their psychology. I go to the very depth of what's happening. When I worked for the Army, I took the pistol shooting program that took them, almost a century to develop, and I cut the training in more than half and tripled the number of people at experts. How did I do it? I went and said, give me the 3 best experts in the entire military at shooting, at 45 caliber pistol. I never shot a 45 caliber pistol, never shot a gun before. And I told him I'm going to do this, right? Now I had a partner at the time.
How do you sell this? How do you sell this? How do you go to the military and be like, never shot a gun in my life, but give me the 3 of your best?
I didn't tell him that part. But I had a partner that was from the Special Forces and was John Grinder. He was the one who created NLP. So it was the 2 of us together. And then the day I'm supposed to go to the Army, after a year of going through top secret clearance and all this stuff, he calls me and says, I'm at the airport. I'm really sorry. I have this problem. I got to go handle it. You're on your own. So my guts are going crazy. I show up underground at this facility in Virginia by the security services, and they bring me the best guy in the Army, the best guy in I think it was the Marines, and then the best coach of them all. And they walk in, and they're like, 45, 50 years old, and I'm 24, and I'm in a T-shirt and jeans, and they say, hey, where's the teacher? And I said, well, you mean the instructor? I said, that's me. And they said, where's the teacher? And I said, it's me. Well, how old are you? I'm 24, I just turned 24, I think. And they said, how long have you been shooting? I said, well, I've never shot before, but we're gonna have a good time today. And they're like, looked at me like, am I being punked? I said, no, I don't need to have shot. And you're gonna shoot a gun. So they gave me a 45 caliber pistol. We're in this underground range, I'll never forget. And they're watching me, and I've never shot a gun before, right? And I'm shaking a little bit, and boom, and I put the bullet in the ceiling because it's got a kickback. Did not build rapport. But here's what I did, so you understand what I do to answer your question. I said, I will learn how to do this just like we're gonna train other people to do this, but I'm gonna learn the right way, your way. So we're gonna start with, pick up your gun, all 3 of you, and I want you to go through the very first step like you're about to go shoot this gun, and we're on the range, and I go, stop. And I figure out what they're doing in their head. And I discovered some things were idiosyncratic, like different for each of them. I look for the things that are universal, that's what works. And all of them, without knowing it, took the target, which looked a million miles away to me, and mentally brought the target right here. So in their visualization of the target, they brought it closer. Well, it's right here, you feel certain you're gonna hit it. I'm sitting there going, how am I gonna shoot this thing way the hell out there? So that was one of the things. I watched the rhythm of what they did. I saw what they did with their breath, how they held the gun. And so I broke it all down into steps until I found what they all had in common. And then I took a new group of people and trained them to do it. And in a day and a half, not 4 days, we qualified everybody and tripled the number of people at expert. And the colonel who wrote up the project to the general said, it's the first breakthrough in pistol shooting since World War I. So that gave me momentum. But that's how I think. I go and figure out what's those differences are. So when I train people, you know what I did? I didn't let them shoot the gun until they'd handled the gun over and over again with no bullets, with nothing perfectly, exactly like the other guys. And the first time they shot the gun, I literally put the target 3 feet in front of them. Boom, right through the center. Boom, right through the center. Hey, this is cool shit. And then took it 10 feet, and then 20. And then by the time we got it to 50 feet and more, these guys were performing at an incredible level. So it's these micro things. When somebody's in a tough place, like never been there before, then the work, it takes more work, right? But I love both. And I love doing the one-on-ones that I get to do with amazing people and challenge people. And I love being able to do, crowds of 20 and 30 and 40,000 people, which we did. I'm doing a seminar in a few weeks. Again, I did it last year for 1.5 million people for 6 days.
I was a part of it. Billy got me into it.
Oh,
You're talking about the virtual one, right?
Yeah, it was the virtual one, exactly.
Yeah. Really fucking early in the morning. Wish it was. Wish it wasn't. I told Billy I'll go. I'll meet you at the end, and I'll turn that on. I was the lukewarm guy at that time. Faith. I want to circle to faith.
Yes.
I think that we're living in a time right now where people are starting to lack faith. Right.
I agree.
And I feel like faith is like the foundation.
I agree.
And if you don't have a foundation, regardless of where you're building, it's always rocky.
I agree.
What's your thoughts on faith, and how does a man build his faith?
You don't have to build it. You have to understand you were born with it. I'm not talking about your religion. I'm talking about your faith. we both share, we're both Christians, I know, but I don't tell people what to believe. What I think is important is that they find what is so for them inside. They find their connection with God. It's like trying to touch God, the story of the blind people touching God, and one touches the tail, and they all have a different perception of what God is. They're only getting a little piece of it. God's so much more than that, right? But faith you were born with, and I'll prove it to you. Think of all the people that are watching or listening right now, our friends out there, who get up every day and get in a car and drive it. How the hell do you get up, drive a car 65 miles an hour down the street? Well, there's nothing but a yellow line dividing you from other people coming 65 miles an hour at you, and you know, every single day in every city on earth, people get killed because the person on their side crosses that line. They fell asleep, they're trying to text, they're upset, they're drunk. Happens every single day of your life. How the hell do you do that? There's only one way, faith. Without faith, you couldn't make that drive. You would have to stay home and do nothing, which is pretty much what we did during COVID. People lost faith and thought a little microbe was going to destroy the planet, right? And it wasn't true. We all found out it wasn't true, unfortunately, the hard way, after all those shutdowns and all the problems and so forth. So without faith, we don't function. But faith is a muscle. And the more you use a muscle, the stronger it gets.
Amen.
Faith unused does not grow, it shrinks. Courage unused does not grow, it shrinks. Passion unexpressed does not grow, it shrinks. So, but if you use more of it and you rely on it more, you discover it's there. And what I found is, I personally, everyone is different in their approach. My wife is unbelievable. She's one of the most incredible human beings I know. She just has faith. I have to earn it. It's just my thing. I don't know. It's the way I'm there. It's like my way of earning it is over practice, over prepare, over deliver, be so ready to go, and then step into that room, and then everything I prepared for hours. My team will be working with me till 2 a.m, designing stuff for a day's event, for example, 12 hours. And I got mind maps and ideas, and I stand out in that audience, and it all changes because I feel the people, I see what's needed. But because I've loaded my system, so to speak, I feel like I've done my part, and then God comes through you.
Amen. You prepared yourself.
That's my part. Now, some people just have the faith, and it works. I wish I worked that way in some way, but I don't. That's just not how I function.
That's so beautiful. And honestly, I literally just spoke about this with Andrew Tate. I don't know if you know who Andrew Tate is.
Yeah, of course I do, sure.
And I told him, God prepared me for this. Like, I did not prepare. I prepared as much as I can, but when we were having a conversation, it was like I already knew where it was going, and I was so confident. And I tell people now, I'm like, I'm probably the most confident in the room, but I'm confident because I'm confident in my Lord, not me.
Yeah, I'm confident I'm guided.
Yeah.
When someone stands up in those rooms, and it's been 47 years, when they stand up, it's different every time. And when they stand up, it's already done. And then I get to see how it's done. And then afterwards, I look at what I did and figure it out so I could do it again or teach other people to do it. I figure out the patterns, but that's really the process. But I want you to know that where I am, like, I don't go preach to people about their religion at all. I tell people, whatever you believe, I hope you practice it because you won't be happy otherwise. You won't be fulfilled. And I also believe that somebody who thinks that there is no God, there isn't anything greater in the universe than yourself, it's a little bit egotistical and a little bit silly. It's like saying that, Webster's dictionary is the result of an explosion in a print factory. It all came together just perfectly. So I think if you can do your part and you can work your tail off and you can over-deliver, then something magical happens. Grace. Some people call it luck. Grace, God, the universe, whatever you want to do. But my personal belief is it's really hard to be fulfilled without that. But I don't ever do that. I decided not to become a minister of sorts because I wanted to reach people that weren't being reached. I didn't want to talk to people that are already there. I want to reach people that they see me, they experience it, they feel how much real love and care is there. And then they might ask me what I believe in that area, right? And then it's there.
Well, remember,
as opposed to proselytizing to someone. I'm not here to do that.
I explain to people all the time, I'm not a preacher. I'm a man who fears God and loves to talk about it.
That's beautiful.
So the thought behind it is, if Jesus came down and said, hey, preach, the number one thing he would say is don't use your mouth, use your actions.
I agree.
Because people could talk all day.
That's right.
And a lot of people that talk about Jesus aren't moving the way Jesus wants to be moving.
That's right.
So I'm very proud of the way you're moving. Not that you need my... I can go to bed now that George is proud of me.
I feel so much better.
But before
I always tell people, you can know who I am. You don't have to see how my lips move. You can see how my feet and my hands and my body has moved for 47 years. It's real clear who the hell I am and what I really stand for and what I really deliver. And I think that's the greatest message any of us can have, because anybody can talk a good game. And the most disgusting thing to me in the world is all the virtual signaling that you see on social media, where people don't even know the whole story of what's going on in some part of the world, and they present how great they are because they're supportive of something.
That is annoying.
Like, what are you going to do? Do something. Don't just talk about or try and present yourself.
Well, they're adding to the problem.
Yeah.
If you don't actually have a solution, you're talking about it, you're starting the fire. If you, like, a lot of people would get mad at me, why aren't you speaking up about this? Because I don't know about it.
Oh, I think that's fair. That's
I
intelligent.
don't know about it. How am I going to speak about it? What if I'm talking my ass and I go in the wrong direction? And then I convince other people to go in the wrong direction.
And we're not all equal in our understanding or our skill.
It's Valentine's Day, and so I feel romantic, and I wrote a poem for you guys. You want to hear it? Roses are red, violets are blue. Trim your balls, and your date will thank us too. What's up, fellas? Valentine's Day is around the corner. Manscaped got the remedy that the love doctor ordered. His prescription? Let me tell you. It's the new Performance Package 5.0 Ultra, designed to elevate your grooming game and shine like the little heartthrob you are. A little personal experience about Manscaped to me. One, I could not believe how excellent it is at not cutting. The sensitive guy, man. Nothing's worse than going on a date and then trying to stretch and pretend like you're not trying to move your boxers around your balls because you're chafing. You don't want that, bro. You want to focus on the girl that you have right in front of you. So do yourself a favor. Get Manscaped and stop playing games with your balls, bro. That ain't something you play with. Well, I mean, you know what I mean. Join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped. With our exclusive offer, go to manscaped.com and snag yourself 20% off plus free shipping. Use the code GEORGE.
You know, so it's like today, I was interviewing a former UK Prime Minister, and I had him with this group, and it was right around the time that Brexit was coming. And sure enough, some people asked a question, somebody asked a question, and he gave his answer, what he thought about that. And the person says, well, I think you're completely wrong. I don't think you know what you're talking about at all. And he goes, well, I was Prime Minister for 8 years, right? Tony Blair, right? And I go, you're a war criminal. And it's like, we oversimplify everything in a complex world, and we live in the world today that if we've been on a plane, we think we can fly it. We're not all equal in our skills. We can become equal in our skills if you want to put the time and the energy and the effort into it, but we live in a world now where it's all about instantaneous fulfillment, and it's not real. It's not really fulfillment, it's positioning, and positioning makes you feel empty in the end. You don't feel strong, you feel fearful. That's what this whole imposter syndrome thing is people like, trying to be something that they're not. Look, you can build yourself into anything you want to become. You know, our Creator gave us this thing called choice. And you can make new choices, and you can take a new direction right now today. You don't like your life? Change it. You don't like your business? Change it. You don't like your relationship? Change you first, because if you just change it, you'll have the same problem again, because you're part of it.
Amen.
Right? You don't like your finances? Change it. Anybody can change it, as long as you stop making up stories and you stop coming up with all the excuses because you're just fearful. We're all fearful. Everybody has fear. That's why faith is so powerful. Faith is the only thing that can get you over the fear. You're scared, but you do it anyway. That's what courage is. It doesn't take courage if you're not scared. Yeah. And most of the muscles that we develop, spiritual muscles, emotional muscles, faith, courage, determination, all those, they come because you did it not because you felt like it. You did it because you knew it was going to serve something more than you, or you knew it was going to serve you as well.
Mm-hmm. There's two things that faith. There's two stories that I hit in my head, and I want to share it here because I know there's going to be a lot of people watching this. And the two things that I always rely on when it comes to faith, because sometimes you have to remind yourself to have faith, even when you see a man who's like, man, that guy has a lot of faith. Trust me, the devil has put him to the test to have that faith. And there was this one, an amazing speaker, and he said, God will give you the vision at the end, but he won't tell you how to get there because you need faith to get there. And I thought that was really beautiful. Yeah. And then to tie in the scripture, there was a woman that was in the crowd, and Jesus was walking. And at the time Jesus was walking and he was healing, he was a very famous man. And some people wanted to talk to him, some people didn't. And this woman who's ill, she just says, I'm not going to bother him, but I know if I just touch his clothes that I'll be healed. And she touches him, and instantaneously she was healed, and she felt it. And Jesus turns around and he goes, who touched me? Who touched me? Obviously, he knows who touched her. He goes, who touched me? I felt power leave me. And she got scared. She goes, it was me. I just knew that if I touched you, that I would be healed. And he said, daughter, it was your faith that healed you. Mm-hmm. And you know, I circled with that because the thing that rang with me, man, was a lot of people always ask me, when you talk to a man who doesn't want to know God, the first thing he brings up is the things that, why would this happen if there's a God, right? And I think that everybody has the same tools.
Yeah.
Some people that have bad intentions have better faith than you, so they could get there quicker than you. Yeah. And I always try to tell people, man, don't run away from faith. Do not run away from faith, because it's either in this world, it's either you're contributing or you're going to be a part of somebody else's contribute.
It's true. It's true. Faith without works is dead too. We got to do our part, right?
That's the hard
I
work.
have faith, but they aren't doing anything. So it's like hope. Hope is a good first step, but hope is not enough, right? You got to get yourself in action. You got to do something. You got to learn. You got to grow. You got to, what some people call fail, I call learning. You got to learn. Right? And every time you don't succeed and you learn something, you get better if you keep moving forward. But I think, even your human body is this. I wrote a whole book called Life Force, and I interviewed 150 of the best scientists, regenerative doctors, Nobel laureates about these incredible breakthroughs like stem cells and things that are occurring. And one of the things I ended up doing a whole chapter on was understanding placebos. Because placebos are amazing. You can take any problem a human being has and give them a placebo, and a percentage of them get well. I mean, physically well.
You changed my life when you first told me that.
No, I didn't know that.
When you told me you took 10 people in a room that had depression,
yes,
and you got them into the gym.
Yes.
Eight of them didn't have depression anymore.
That's right.
I was secretly depressed when you told me that.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that.
Well, you can.
I didn't know that either.
Changing your biochemistry, people try to do through drugs, and it doesn't work, right? SSRIs, Prozac, Zoloft, all these things. There was a cover of Newsweek a year ago, in 2022, almost 2 years ago, saying all the meta studies say they don't work, but we keep selling them. It's just so crazy. And we did this study where during COVID, we had Stanford come to me, and they had two other professors that went through one of my programs called Date with Destiny. It's a little 6-day program, a real deep immersion. And they said they both are clinically depressed, came out not depressed. And I was like, do you have any data on the people you've worked with? I said, well, I got millions of clients. They said, no, but like scientific data. I said, no. Well, I said, you want to do a study? Let's do a study. They said, we'd love to. So I said, before we do it, tell me, how does this work normally? Meaning, when people go for traditional treatment, how many get well? And they said, if you go across the meta studies, when they do like 100 different studies and see what they have in common, the average is 60% don't improve at all. That's with drugs and therapy. 40% improve, but on average, they improve 50%, so they're half as depressed. Most of them stay on those drugs for the rest of their life, at least a decade. And they don't work. All they do is numb you. They don't take care of the real problem, right? So I said, I think you could do that with a placebo, because by the way, with placebos, the more intense the placebo, the greater the reaction, meaning we can give you an amphetamine to speed your body up, give it as a blue pill and tell you it's a barbiturate, and your body will slow down. It doesn't just heal your body, it'll overcome a drug in your body. But if we really want a powerful injection, powerful thing, the bigger the capsule, the greater the response. If it's an injection, they get even bigger results. And the most powerful result of all was fake surgeries. Because, and I mean, I've shared this with you when we talked about that book, but in what is it, the microscopic surgery for the knees, what's it called? I'm blanking on the name. Arthroscopic, thank you. Arthroscopic surgery, they did a study, they were doing this for all the veterans, and they did fake surgeries on a percentage of them, where they literally put them out, cut them, and did nothing, and put it back together. The results after a year and a half was the people had no surgery improved more than the people had the surgery. So they stopped funding it. Because a surgery, now you really expect a result, right, to make things happen. But anyway, with Stanford, I said, let's do the study. I said, what's the best result you've ever gotten in getting rid of depression? Because this is the middle of COVID when this is happening, and people are, more suicides than the other time, more overdoses. You know how bad it was then. People are freaked out at home. And so I said, what's the best? They said the best was 5 years ago at Johns Hopkins. They gave people for a month psilocybin. So they gave them magic mushrooms for a month and cognitive therapy for a month. I said, well, after that, you better be changed in some way, right? And the guy said, it was amazing. It was the greatest result in the history of psychiatry. 6 weeks after this month's worth of treatment, 54% of the people had no symptoms whatsoever. It's like unbelievable. I said, I think we can beat that. We'll see, right? So I said, you set up the study. They did the same type of study, no drugs, obviously, and just the 6-day seminar. And what do? We get people to rewire how they perceive the world. In other words, whether your life is terrible, shitty, great, magnificent, has nothing to do with your life. It has to do with what you focus on. Right now, there are a million things that you could be pissed off about in the world if you wanted to be, or your life, or worried about. There's a million things you could be happy about too. What's wrong is always available, so is what's right. So when you shift your belief systems consciously, and you decide what you want to value, and you align your behavior values, you have a different life. So these people go through this process, and the results were so profound that they were afraid they're going to get canceled if they published it. So they blacklisted it, meaning they didn't know who it was, and they sent the details out to 3 different organizations, came back with the same result. 100% of the people after 6 weeks who went through my program for 6 days, not one had any symptoms of clinical depression. 17% of the people they put in had suicidal ideation, constantly thinking of suicide. Not a single person did it. They followed up 11 months later. They're going to do 12 months, but COVID, people were coming back, to work and so forth. So they had all the statistics on the general population. So they did an 11-month study. Nobody depressed anymore, but more importantly, their negative emotions had dropped 72%. Their positive emotions have gone up 51%. Now they're doing a 1-year study right now on engagement. In a business, the more engaged your employees are, the more successful the business is, the more profitable it is. And they look at engagement, disengagement, and active disengagement. Well, disengagement is somebody that's quiet quitting is what we call it now. They're trying to do the least possible. Active disengagement is loud quitting. It's they're pissed off and they're trying to hurt the company but still get paid for a period of time till they're gone. And during COVID, for those 4 years, we had the lowest level of engagement in history and the highest level of active disengagement, people angry. Like you see people on planes now, so mean, in restaurants and things like that. They were pushed down so long, now they've got this agitated state still that's going on. But anyway, the bottom line is, it's a 1-year study. Usually these are 1 month, 3 month studies, 30 or 40 people, 750 people for a year. It just completed. I only saw the 6-month mark. I'm gonna see the other, but they said it's incredible. The people literally made up, their engagement completely transformed, made up for 4 years and then some improved. And then for the 11 or 6 months I saw it afterwards, every month it got better and I never saw them again because they have a different psyche. So there's no question, and this was published in the Journal of Psychiatry, the first study I told you about, not one phone call from anybody. And people are still selling those drugs because it's like we're so trained to be a certain way. But for people that are hungry and people want a solution, there are many, I'm not the only one, but there are many that actually work. And all you have to do is find them. There isn't a problem that we can't solve. Every problem that mankind has created, mankind can solve. And we're all part of man or humankind, right? Mm-hmm. Man or woman, doesn't matter.
Yep. I recently, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I feel like you would know this, there was things that I had to practice. When I was depressed, I was hanging around with people I shouldn't be hanging out with. So I had to retrain my brain into behaving. And it was kind of like I was a psychopath. If I was angry, because when I was depressed, I was angry. So say somebody was walking by and he pissed me off, I would say something negative about him in my head. But then I made myself say 3 nice things about him in my head. That's great. Because I was like, truly it was my fear of God, right? I didn't want God to make me look at me. And I didn't want him to look at me looking at another son of his and I'm just talking trash and then still asking him to come help me. And then when I was getting myself out of it, I learned, and I want to know if this is right, but your brain can't be depressed and grateful at the same time.
Yeah, that's what we talked about before, exactly. I have a process I show people the 2 emotions that mess up your relationships, that mess up your life, that'll mess up your career, your business, is fear and anger, right? Yeah. Those 2 extremes. And when you're grateful, as simplistic as that sounds, when I say grateful, I don't mean intellectually grateful. I mean, you really feel it. And I have a process I do every day for that I teach people to do for 10 minutes. And when you're really grateful, you can't be grateful and fearful simultaneously. You can't be angry and grateful simultaneously. So that's the power of that. One emotion is really powerful to rid or get it out of your body. And what you did perfectly was you caught yourself and broke the pattern. It was a habit. And you caught yourself, said, no, I'm gonna do this, and you did 3 new good things. Broke it, did it again, 3 new things. Now you had strong enough reasons to do it because yours is, I gotta do this for God. Not everybody has that belief system, but they might do it for their child. They might do it for their husband or wife. Most of us, I think one of the most beautiful things about human beings, what makes us gorgeous as beings, is that we'll do more for others than we'll even do for ourselves. And it's somebody you love, somebody you care about, whether it be your kid, whether it be somebody else. And so sometimes that's what's needed. But you need leverage. You had leverage, something that makes change a must. And then you have to rewire yourself. The reason these people lasted, by the way, they followed me. Stanford had a group that followed me for 3 years prior. And they measured my body when I'm in these audiences, 10, 15, 20,000 people for 12 hours a day, 4 days in a row, 7 days in a row in these stadiums. And they wanted to see what my body did. So they found all these interesting statistics, like, I jump 1,000 times in an average day, one of those days, and I weigh 290 pounds, so every time I come down, it's 4 times your body weight. So imagine 1,000 pounds 1,000 times in a day, and I've been doing that for 47 years.
How's your knees?
My knees are actually great. My bones, though, are like, they did my bone density. They go, these are humans, these are ultra athletes. This is something we've never seen before, this gorilla called you, right? Because the demands were so intense. But also, if you've ever been running with a friend, and you can't speak anymore, that's because the lactic acid has gotten to about a 4. I'm at an 18 and still speaking. I have the lean body mass of NFL defensive lineman, right? So they go through all this stuff and what I do. But the most powerful thing was they saw that every time I go on stage, there's this thing they call, when they do these measurements on like the Tom Brady's of the world, or they did them on the hockey teams that went over again, like the Tampa Bay Lightning, teams that come from behind and win, they wanted to see what happens biochemically. And so they discovered something. So a guy like Tom Brady, he's down by 10 points. It's the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl and he wins. How on earth? He has this surge of testosterone, which makes you focused. It puts you in the zone. And you also, anything's going on, you remember every detail when you have enough testosterone. But usually you also get cortisol. That's the stress hormone simultaneously. In this championship physiology, you get this explosion of this driving testosterone and the cortisol drops off the cliff. So all you get is maximum output. It doesn't guarantee you're going to win, but it maximizes your possibilities.
You're moving at a different pace.
A totally different biochemical and psychological pace, right? And so I do that every time I got on stage. They followed me for 3.5 years. And I burned 11,300 calories, to give you an idea, one day on stage, too. They just couldn't believe this.
It's probably because all this. Like this
such intensity. Right? But I don't stand on the stage. I run up into the top of the third level of the stadium and so forth. I'm always in the room. You never know when I'm going to strike. But what was interesting was then they started measuring my audience. And that's how they could understand why these changes have lasted. Because they go, how has this lasted just from one session?
Are you feeding off of them?
Well, we feed off each other. They did it with my live audience, and then when I started doing digital seminars where people in like 50 countries, they went to 15 countries, and while we're doing the seminar, they did the same thing they did to me. I wore this device that measured my heart rate variability and so forth. They came and took my saliva to see what's happening in my hormones, took my blood. They did the same thing with these people. And guess what they saw? It looks like a song, like everybody's different, and then all of a sudden it begins, and as I start surging up, the audience's biochemistry matches mine, the cortisol drops off, the testosterone is through here, and that's why they storm through the fire. That's why, like if I asked you where were you on 9/11, any person around the world, even non-Americans, can tell you where they were, what they saw, the moment they saw it. Ask you where you were on 8/11, you have no clue. Because you didn't have the surge of that energy, that emotion, and those biochemical changes. So that's why this lasts, and that's why it works. So when you catch yourself and rewire yourself, yes, you're doing something behaviorally, but you're also making biochemical changes when you do it. And if you do it over and over again, it just becomes the new habit, the new way of being, and then you don't have to work at it, right? You just have a new quality of life.
It's incredible. I told you I was going to sit here as a student. I literally said it. There is something I wrote, and I want to read it verbatim from what you said because I want to tap in. In 1991, you wrote the book, Awaken the Giant Within.
Yeah, I was 31, wow.
And there was this one thing that, man, it caught my heart, and I had to write this because I really pray that this sits with a lot of people in our generation because I'll explain why. It's the Niagara Syndrome.
Oh, yes.
They jump into a lake of life not knowing where they're going to end up. And they get caught in the current events, the current fears, the current challenges. They get directed by their environment and not their values. The time when you wrote that, the current was strong, but now because of social media, the current is raging.
I agree with you.
How could you explain this to children that are being risen not by their parents, but by tablets, by iPhones, by social media? How do we get them to not jump in yet without knowing their values? And then when we come from a home that doesn't have a leading father, that doesn't demonstrate good values, how does a man even find good values?
Well, when I was, I think 19 or 20, I just learned some of these skills, right? The NLP skills, and I'd started to prove to myself I could really produce lasting change. And the first thing I thought was, I'm helping all these people coming to these little events. Back then there were 50, 100 people, 150 people. But like, I want to help somebody one-on-one. I want to mentor somebody. So I went there in Chino prison system in California. They had a thing called the M2 program, Match 2 People. And so I got matched with this guy that was a murderer. And I came in and met with him, twice a month, like clockwork. And he didn't have any of those values. I helped him discover them. When I say didn't have them, we all have values. There's something distinct in the human creature that knows right from wrong, regardless of how you've been conditioned. Your conditioning can cover it up. But at a core level, we know what's important. It's kind of wired into us, so we wouldn't survive as a species. It's why we succeed. We succeed not because of one individual. We succeed because we create communities that can solve any problem. One person can't solve a lot of problems, but a group of people can. So anyway, I worked in that environment, and I got to see that within a few months, I got him to change his physiology, because that's what I start with. Start with the body, and then you'll get the mind, right?
Would explain this if you don't mind me asking. Was
Yeah, not at all.
Was he out of shape? Was he not?
No, he's in prison, and he's doing nothing but being rageful, angry.
But was he like that before prison?
Yes.
Okay.
But in prison, it's magnified, as you can imagine.
So you absolutely have to start first with your body.
I start with the body. I think it's the fastest way to shift. There's lots of ways. Sometimes I start with other ways, but you just think about it. If someone is sitting here like this, and they're talking like this, and they make gestures like this, and they have this tone of voice, and
They're defeated.
they're totally defeated. They're going to be depressed. Their shoulders are down, their head's down, the breathing is shallow. You take that same person and you just put their shoulders back. As simplistic as that sounds, you move their body faster. You get them to speak at a different tempo. And all of a sudden, their entire biochemistry changes.
What's up, guys? This video is sponsored by Life Cycle. When I opened up this package in front of my fiance's mother, she lost her marbles. She is so excited about this, and I'm excited to share why I love this product. This right here is Life Cycle's Biohacker Set. Actually, their most popular product because it covers from A to Z. Energy, stamina, stress, sleep, immunity, focus, mental clarity, gut health, and mood. Honestly, it covers it all. All right, I want to share you my life cycle. In the mornings, I take lion's mane, cordyceps, and chaga. This gives me energy 4 to 6 hours. I am just like a lightning bolt. All right, turkey tail might have saved my life. This might be a little bit too much information, but my stool is impeccable right now. If you don't know what stool is, don't Google it. The next two are reishi and shiitake. You're gonna wanna put these next to your toothbrush. I'm not exaggerating. Belle and I both took this before bed, and I have never had a night's sleep like that. Don't forget to use my code for the link in the description, and that is going to be George20 for 20% off. Seriously. Try this. You're not going to regret it.
So I show people how to make changes quickly, but then to make it lock in, you need rituals, right? You can have lots of goals, but goals don't mean squat. It's like New Year's. People set a New Year's resolution, and 91% of people never even get close to covering it because they have this thing they want, but they have no plan, or they have a little crappy plan, but they don't have rituals, like things you're going to do every day that make it automatic, like the ones you're creating. Like, if I do that, I'm going to do this instead. Mm-hmm. Do that, do this. And after a while, you don't have to think about the ritual. It takes over. Yeah. It'll start to happen automatically for you, right? So when I look at these situations, like working with these people, I looked at it and said, okay, anyone can get those values. They have to be awakened. I start with the body. And so all of a sudden he started running, and pretty soon he's running 2 and 3 miles in a day, doing all these push-ups. And all of a sudden he's owning himself. He feels in control of his body. Once you take control of one part of yourself with discipline, I always tell people, my original teacher, Jim Rohn, used to say, discipline weighs ounces, regret weighs tons. Like, if you want to have a great life, you got to learn to discipline yourself. And if you discipline yourself in one area, it's amazing. You'll start disciplining yourself in others. And discipline sounds like a negative word, but what it really means is taking back control. And so I watched that. Then I started feeding him books to read, As a Man Thinketh. So he started to feel his thoughts are controlling and so forth. And, you know, by the time he got out like 8 years later, he was a different human being. He was a loving human being, in control of his life, a peaceful human being. So the answer to your question is, it's great to have a father, but unfortunately, many of us, I had 4 different ones, they didn't stick around. Many of us didn't have that strong father, but we can find that in a mentor. Amen. And we're in a world today where if you're conscious, you can go find those mentors because those people are online, or you can join an organization or something of that nature. So the answer to your question on a simplistic level is, yes, it's great to have a father, but not all fathers are there. Not all fathers are great fathers. But there's always someone out there that if you can show you're out for something more than yourself and you're trying to accomplish something, somebody will move in your direction. That's the grace of life. But you have to first show you're committed. You got to show you're going to do something, in my opinion. That, to me, is what it takes. And social media, you're never going to teach these kids not to do these things. They're going to have to experience things, unfortunately, that are painful. What you really need is get to the parents. You know, that's what really matters. But there's so many absent parents there because they're so stressed out. They don't know how to manage their own states. So it's not an easy thing. I don't pretend there is. But I think that's why communities, churches, environments where people are conscious about wanting to support one another are so valuable. And you can find it in many different ways, but you have to pursue it. You know, God moves to those that are willing to do their part. I mean, faith without action is nothing, right? So it's like, you've got to do your part. You may not know everything, but if you start taking a few steps, you'll get momentum. You'll go on the journey we talked about, right? You'll meet new people. You'll have some new mentors. You'll face some new dragons, but then you'll learn to slay them. You'll develop skills and abilities you didn't know you had. You'll slay the dragon, and you'll come home the hero of your own life. And now you have gifts to give people because you've earned it, because you've become someone. You aren't just sitting around telling people your opinion or virtual signaling. But look, the pendulum always swings very far, and then it swings back. we're swinging about as far as I can imagine right now in our society. Probably going to go further than I even imagined, but I think we're going to find balance. There's a lot of young people coming back to God right now.
Amen.
You know, and the Z generation, they're like, it's amazing. People say they don't care. The millennials had a little different frame, not all of them, but some of them. But the Z generation is having a different piece, and I think that's the other part of history that's great. Like, if you want to know history, I'm going to give it to you in 4 sentences. Good times create weak people. Weak people create bad times. Bad times create strong people, and strong people create great times.
It's literally
that's the history of the world. It's a cycle that we go through, and right now we're in the cycle where we have a lot of people that are weak. They, silence is violence. Words are violence. I heard Chris Rock the other day said, if you think words are violence, no one has slapped the shit out of you on national television.
Hilarious.
It's like, no, words are not violence, right? And now some people saying words are violence are saying, oh yeah, somebody can chop off the heads of children, rape women, and oh, by the way, that's totally okay. I'm not saying what anybody else has been okay, but that's totally okay. It's justified. I mean, same people saying words are violence. So we're in a weird position right now.
Yeah.
But that calls to people to the point where they get humbled because they don't know what to do. And when you get humbled, you tend to look for something beyond yourself, something deeper in this world. Call it grace, call it God, call it universal intelligence. I don't limit people to use the words I would use. Everyone has their own way of reaching that, and I'm respectful of that. But they got to find it, or they're going to feel really empty inside.
I love the way you move. You show grace to everyone. And I was just telling Billy, we were talking about something personal, and the reason I overcame it is because when I was reading the scripture, it just dawned on me. I go, Jesus always knew Judas was going to betray him, but he always treated him like the other disciples.
Yeah.
There's power in that. And then they come up to him and they're like, you got to pay taxes. And he's like, I got to pay taxes. He goes, who's on the coin? They go, Caesar. I go, well, then give to Caesar what's Caesar's and give to God what's God. But then he says something that's even more powerful after that. He says, but those so we don't offend him. And I just paused. He goes, but so that we do not offend them. And then he went with them. And I thought to myself, I go, my God, I go, the only way I could reach a man is by love. It is by love. It is only love. Because if I looked at you and I go, listen, dude, you're a dumb piece of shit, and I'll tell you why, I guarantee you that person's now out because he knows that you don't love him and you don't care for him. Yeah. But if I go, hey, Tony, I think I think you would be more sincere and eager to listen because you know it's coming from somebody who cares about you.
I 100% believe I try to teach anybody that I work with who works with people, coaches, trainers, therapists, all those types of people. I said, you can't influence somebody if you're judging them. I mean, it's possible, but you're not going to influence most people by judging. The only way you can influence them is for them to feel how much you sincerely care. And people don't trust that initially. I remember I have a friend right now that I've known for about, probably 30 years. And that quote you get from one of my books when I was like, Awaken the Giant Within. I think I was 30 years old when I wrote that book. And you were describing that opening to that event where I was flying in the helicopter and I was worried that people aren't going to make it to my event because there was all this traffic, forever as far as the eye could see. And it was my event. It was like 15,000 people. And it blew my mind. Well, he was in that event. So I'll give you an idea. And he's been a friend for 30 years, maybe 25 years, whatever it's been. And he's told several people, how Tony won me over? He goes, I got dragged there by somebody. I thought this is BS. This is a bunch of crap. And I'm not jumping and doing this stuff. And in those days, I wore a suit and tie. That was the style in those days. So I'm on stage, and he could see the sweat just going down the tie further and further and further. So the tie was totally soaked. My shirt was soaked. I was sweating like crazy. I was giving my soul. He said, after he did that, he goes, I thought to myself, I could jump a few times. That son of a bitch can do that, push that stuff. So I think you got to go first. You can't lecture people. You gotta be an example, not like you're perfect or some bullshit. Nobody is. Yeah. But where you're willing to see what isn't working and improve it, and you're willing to constantly find a way to be better. And if you do that, life's amazing. But I think there's an interesting thing about the Bible that I don't know if you agree with or not, but I'll share it with you from my perspective. One of my sons, when he finally found Christ, a lot of people, when they find God in whatever form they find God, they believe that they have found the way and everyone else should do it that way, right? And his way was kind of hellfire and damnation at the time, right? And I'm Christian myself, right? So it's like he's lecturing me. This is blowing my mind, right? So one day I was in Fiji. I have a resort there and a time there. And I was with my wife. And I was like, I'm not going to influence my son by talking about this. I said, I need to read the whole Bible from beginning to end. I want to do it over the next 4 or 5 days. I'm going to go on a fast, which is I did.
Amen.
And I fasted and read the entire Bible in 5 days. My wife will tell you, no bullshit, read the whole thing, cover to cover. And it's quite a read. But when you read
Some might say the best in the world.
You know,
You've
like,
sold a lot of books, but my man
It's a
Jesus
best-selling
Christ
book.
is a little heavier than you, bro.
Yeah. Well, I read the Old Testament and the New Testament, right?
Let's
so
go.
I'm reading both, right?
Let's
the whole
go.
thing, right? And one thing struck me that I thought was really interesting, and I went to my son with this because he was so locked up, and he's not like that now. He's much more, it's like I hate it, you know, I often tell people the worst thing about Christians sometimes is Christians. You know, Christ was not a Christian. You know, we've made this whole thing up here, like this is how it is, right? My son was becoming like that. I didn't want that. But at the same time,
you're so accurate with that, man. Like when I was speaking about Jesus, I made a joke to my mom. I go, the only people that come at me are Jesus lovers. Like Muslims are like, I'm so proud of you. Jewish people are like, I respect you. Christians are like, nah. I'm like, what?
They all got their judgment how it should be, what should be, right? As if they had their direct communication. So anyway, I went to my son after I read this whole thing, and I thought a lot about it. And I said, honey, I just read the whole Bible from cover to cover. He's like, no. And my wife's there. She goes, he did, day and night. In Fiji, 5 days, eat pineapple and watermelon and drank water. That was it. He fasted the entire time. I said, it was a wild journey. I said, it was beautiful. I said, and a couple things that, kind of came to me. I said, the first thing that came to me is God seems like a selfish bastard in the first half of that book. I said, he's mean, he's jealous, he's spiteful. I said, that's not my experience of God. And then I read the second half of the Bible, right? The New Testament is like it's not just about one, it's everybody, and everyone can experience this joy and this love. And I said, I got a question for you. Because he was like, this is what the Bible says. And rather than saying, look, the Bible's been translated by men, there are a group of Romans that may decide what went in and what went out. We found missing pieces of the Bible, all that stuff. I just simply said, do you think God grows? And he looked at me and said, what are you saying? Is this a technique? I said, it's not a technique. I said, it's a simple question. Because I read the first half of the Bible, and God seems very selfish and spiteful and mean. And the second part, totally, completely loving. So I said, everything in the universe grows or dies. He goes, well, God knows what's going to happen, before it's going to happen. He knows your thoughts. I said, I'll buy all that. But my question is not that. He goes, well, then you're saying it doesn't mean the same thing as the words. I said, no, I just said, does God grow? He really thought about it for a little bit. And I said, because my concern is your experience of God is through a minister, which I think it's a beautiful thing. But I'd love it if you'd had a direct experience of God, and that was what you're making judgments from rather than what somebody else tells you. I'd love to have you read that same Bible and see what your experience of it is rather than someone telling you what it means through their filters. And that's the only thing I wish. I wish everybody's experience of God, quite frankly, was as unique as your signature. So instead of fighting over, you have to have my signature, everybody wanted to have their own individual signature, their own individual connection with God. That's the connection that I personally experience and the way I perceive God. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I don't try to make other people to be a certain way, or what my way is, or somebody else's way is. I just want them to experience the joy of knowing that they're not alone and that they're made of something way more than their intellect and their ego.
I love that you challenge your son in ways that are uncomfortable, because there's a lot of men that are like, I don't want my son to get like this. And they spare the rod. Yeah. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Listen, the reason I have my utmost respect for God is because my father made me respect him.
Yes.
And so I had a way to look at my father. I'll give you an example. People are like, well, I'll wait if God presents himself, then okay, listen. Listen. My father is an Assyrian man that has flesh. Do you know what that man would do to me? If I was ever like, you come over here, and I need you, come here. My dad would be like, me come here? Me come here? And then he would dismantle me where I stand and then reshape my mind to know that there comes with respect.
Yes.
I have to respect my father. I'm not going to make my father get up so he could come to me. I'm going to get up to go to my father. And I really, really do feel the same way that we communicate right here, you'll understand me more if there's love. Yes. If you're not coming and presenting yourself fully humbly and surrendering yourself with love, I don't think God's going to even want to talk to you.
Well, what if you're God and you come here to this incredible place you created called planet Earth, and you walk up to one of your creations and you say, hey, creation, Mrs. So-and-so, Mr. So-and-so, how you liking this thing I created for you? And the person says, God, I'm glad you showed up because I got a bone to pick with you. I mean, first of all, why do you make it so effing hot all the time? I mean, you could have made it 72 degrees year round here. I mean, it's insane. And then you make these stupid people that get in my way and interfere with what I'm trying to accomplish. Why wouldn't you make everybody nice and connected? And you make these little red ants, and they bite my ass. I mean, why would you create such a thing if you're God? And then God goes to one of his other creations and says, how are you liking this place? And they say, oh, God, thank God you're here. I've always wanted to thank you directly. This is the most amazing paradise. It's so unbelievable. First of all, you never get bored because you're always changing the temperature. It's so amazing. You bring so many people to challenge me to grow. And you made these little red ants. Man, these things are courageous. They're 1/1,000,000th my size and they bite my ass. It's amazing. Now the question is, if you were God, who do you want to hang out with, the first person or the second one?
Wow.
So I tell people, say, there is no God. I said, there's God. You're just bitching so much, he doesn't want to hang out with you.
I got a Christian joke. There's a bunch of scientists.
Okay.
And they're like, God, I don't know if you knew about AI, but we figured it out, buddy. We don't need you. In fact, they all smirk at each other like, we could create humans now. And God sits back and goes, really? He goes, oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. He goes, okay, show me. So they look at each other knowing the Old Testament. They grab dirt with their hands. And then he goes, that's mine. Get your own. It all comes from God. That joke always made me laugh. I wanted to share it with you.
But with my son, what interesting thing is, to his credit, was, it created an opening because it created a thought that couldn't get out of his head. Does God grow? Okay, well then I want the Bible to guide me, but I also need to do my part and see everything's evolving. But the core principles of love, they're part of every religion, truthfully. What is the core? Treat thy neighbor like thyself, love thy neighbor like thyself, right? Which, by the way, implies that you would actually love yourself, not fake love, ego love, but a depth of caring for yourself, because if you care for yourself, you care for others. When you're beating yourself up all the time, pretty soon you can't handle it. Now you're in other people's faces because you're so raw, you can't handle it anymore. So I just think there's certain universal principles that can bring lasting happiness. And the most important one of life, I believe, besides love, is growth. Because when you grow, everything grows or dies.
Yeah.
And if you don't grow, you pay a big price. And when you do grow, you have something to give. And what makes people's life meaningful is not like anybody can make themselves feel good with very few things. You can, food, alcohol, have sex with yourself, whatever it is, but it's never as good by yourself.
No.
with connection. So when something great happens in your life, the first thing you want to do is share with somebody. And that makes it more. That's why we have relationships. So I just think, life is the quality of relationships. The quality of relationship with yourself, with your creator, with your family, with your friends. That's the quality of a person's life. Everything else is secondary to that.
I wrote something down, and I've never said this out loud. I want to say it to you, and I want to see how you feel about it and if it is the correct way to go about it. Because I'm trying to be a Tony.
Well, I don't know if there's a correct way for anything. There's many ways to get places. There's some more enjoyable, some that are easier, some that succeed faster. But I don't have that right-wrong mode within me about how to go about something, because there's so many ways. And I think that's the beauty of life, the diversity of life. But I'd love to hear what you're going to say.
That's exactly what Tony would say. I'm reading through comments, and I always ask God, I want you to challenge my heart on things you want me to talk about. So that way, when I see it, if I know that there's a great amount of people that watch my stuff, and I just figure out, just give me your wisdom, right? Like, how do I figure this out? And I've been journaling this thought, because I feel like we live in an industry, not in a generation where we have identity issues in all shapes and forms. And the one identity issue that I see more than anything is I don't know who I am. I don't know what I want to become. I don't know what my passions are. I don't know anything about myself. And something came to me, and I wanted to bounce this idea off of you. This is my hypothesis.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't know who you are because you haven't revealed who your creator is.
Yeah, very, very.
If I broke my car and it's a Toyota, I'm not taking it to Hyundai, because the first thing they do when they pop open the hood, they go, I didn't create this. I don't know what's inside of this.
Yes.
And I feel like the people that I meet that know God know their purpose. And there's some Christians that are like, hey, like I still don't know. I know God. I love God. And to me, it's like, okay, well, how much do you know God?
Yeah.
Truly, how much do you know God?
Yeah.
And I really, really have came to the conclusion that if you do not know who you are, you do not know who created you. Because once you find out who created you, the Bible verse that hits me in the head right away is, seek first the kingdom and then the rest shall come. What does that even mean? Well, I can tell you from a man that I was in a place where I shouldn't be. And I asked God, take my feet and place them where you want them to be, not where I want them to be. Because as a child, I'll give you an example. How my relationship in Hollywood was, this is the best way that I could put it in perspective. I'm a little kid playing around at the playground, and my Father in heaven brought me to this playground. He goes, okay, go have fun with your friends. And I went and I'm having fun, but I started acting like them. And I started playing like them. And he calls me back. He goes, hey, come here. What's up? Don't do this. And I go, well, no, everybody's doing it. He goes, yeah, but they're not part of our family. We have respect. We have different standards. And I want to circle back to this right here. It's easy to mix your standards with everyone else's. And man, do I see a lot of copy and pastes out there. And I think we're living in a day and age where people are so caught up on what everybody else is doing, they forget to reflect on what they're doing.
Well, it's with social media, it's out of control. What's that thermos that costs like $45 that kids now, if they don't have it, they get
a Hydro
bullied?
Flask?
What's it called?
A Hydro Flask?
No, it's a different one. It's been around forever. I was just reading about it the other day.
Are you talking about the mug?
Yes.
I just read about it. Like 5 women took it out. It was like the company was broke.
Yeah, it's been around since 1910 or something like that. And now these kids, they all want a $45 thermos because they see everybody else in TikTok has it, and if they don't, they get bullied. Oh, that's not really one of those. That's how insane it is. But it's always been insane. It's just more insane with social media. It's magnified it.
Yep.
And I just think, look, the pathway to finding, quote, your purpose, I think the biggest mistake is thinking you have one purpose. We have lots of purposes. We have different purposes in each day. There might be an overriding purpose to grow, to give, to contribute, to love, whatever, to be an expression of God that you'd be proud of, that God would be proud of, whatever your belief is. But there's so many purposes, and people get caught up in having to create some big purpose. You know what my purpose is? To help. It's really simple. I get calls every day of my life, and it's like, especially now because the stage of life I'm in and because I have so many different skills and businesses and so forth. Somebody's got a challenge in the business. Somebody's got cancer. Somebody's got Alzheimer's. Somebody is worried about something with their kid. And it's like, I take great joy, even though I only have so many hours in the day, of if I can help, then that's what I want to do. And it's like, I don't need to make this grand. I used to have, I'm going to help billions of people. I've done all that, millions of people. It's just be helpful. To me, that's an expression of love. It also doesn't have the ego that I have all the answers. It's just, I can be helpful. That means you're going to do your part too. That's why I always tell people, I'm not your guru. People try to make me in a guru early days. I mean, I'm not here. You're not broken. You don't need to be fixed. But I can be helpful because I have some insights because I've focused on something for 47 years.
You're a tool.
Just like you could teach. I don't know squat about singing, and that wouldn't sound very good.
Hey man, don't take lessons from me.
Or music or whatever, right? I have my own enjoyment of it, but I don't have those skill sets. So everybody, I look at everybody in my life and I go, I think this is why I get along with so many different levels and qualities and types of people in countries. I can enter a country because everybody I meet, I believe, and this is no bullshit, I believe they're superior to me. I see you as superior to me in some way. I don't know what it is yet till I meet the person. And you might be superior at something I don't want to be superior at, like feeling depressed, but you might be better at it than I am. But you're going to be better at something because you have different life experience. So it makes me respect you. It makes me hold you here, whoever you are. And people feel that. They feel respected. They feel loved. They feel cared for. At the same time, I'm no like a wilting flower. I know who the F I am. And I also know I'm superior to every person I meet in some areas, not because I'm so superior, but because I have a different set of life experiences and I've worked at it for 47 years and every day said I got to do it better. And so that makes me feel equality with people. And when you have that equality, then all that other crap goes away and you're not worried about what everybody's thinking and doing. And some of it, honestly, George, is just the experience of living enough life because, there's stages of life where you get to where you just finally say, I don't give a shit. Like when you're in your 20s, you're kind of trying to prove yourself to yourself or to other people. Maybe your 30s, trying to figure things out. Your 40s can be, you look at seasons of your life, 0 to 20, you might have to go to work early like I did or some families do, but you're kind of looked out for to some extent. Other people are teaching you what to believe. 22 to 42, you're the soldier of society. You go out and say, they told me that crap, but I'm going to find out what I believe. I'm going to test it. I'm going to be president of the United States, a billionaire, and have 150 relationships simultaneously, and everybody's going to be happy. And then you go out and find out relationships are more complex than that, and you're not the president, and you're not yet a billionaire. And so it humbles you, and then you look to grow. Then you go like 42, 43 to say 63, that range. If you worked hard in the first 2 seasons, if you planted in the spring and you took care of it in the summer, you're going to be reaping. You're going to be in a position of impact, of power, of quality of life. If you're in business, you're going to be successful at what you do because you've learned and grown. You've been through all the ups and downs, right? It doesn't mean you're done. And then, you get, say, 64 to 84 to 104 to 120, the oldest human being, somewhere in that final season. Then you're in a mentor relationship. You've lived enough life. You don't need to prove anything to anybody. If they know who you are, great. If they know, who cares? Right? Quite frankly, do you want them to like you? If you're a human, you like people, yes, but it's not your life and death anymore. And so you're not tied to that proving to yourself or other people. You just want to serve. And I think not everybody gets there because not everybody grows during all those seasons. But if you really grow during those seasons, I want people to know, you look at all the studies, the most difficult time, most happy on time for most people is 22 to 23 to 43 range. And then the next most, and it starts to be enjoyable, is in that 43, 63. If you're healthy, the strongest time in life, the happiest time for human beings is 64 to about 84 if they stay healthy. Because you know what matters most, it's relationships. You know who you are, you know what you believe. You're not being pushed around by the wind, you're not trying to prove anything. And I wish more people knew the pathway that's really real so that when they're in the middle of that crap, they could still have a compelling future. Because I think that's what's missing when you talk about depression. Our society is in a winter season. This happens about every 20 years we go through a season. When it's springtime, everybody's optimistic, everything's going great. Think of, if
the Roaring 20s.
Pardon me?
The Roaring 20s.
Yeah, that's even more like fall. Springtime would be more like after World War II. After a winter, a really rough time, people wanted to have babies, they had sex like crazy. They didn't want to be part of war. They wanted to build and create, and we have this society that's very optimistic. Then you go through the 70s and 80s, after 20 years of that, from say 45 to around the time John F. Kennedy got killed. Now it's a summertime, it's hot, it's difficult. There's fighting usually historically between older and younger generations during that time. They don't go to war, I don't want to go to war. Then you make it through, exhaust that, and then there's a fall. Life is like really easy, really tough, really easy, really tough. I mean, if you're God, you have the nighttime, the dark night of the soul, you have the morning where it all is brand new again. You'd set it up that way, right? And it builds muscle, it makes you stronger. Well, in the fall season, if it's a fall financially, then, people want to give you a house even though you don't have a job, right? You remember those days, right? Money flows, stock markets go crazy. And then eventually you go back to winter again. And we're in winter, where people are seeing the worst case in almost everything, in each other, in society, in the future. Oh my God, it might be World War III. Oh, are we going to survive? And it's exaggerated during that time. But we get tired of being fearful, and we start to grow, and we stop being as judgmental because it takes so much energy to be upset all the time. Right now, people still get energy from being upset. But pretty soon, they'll start to burn out, and people start to look for something new. And that something new will be a new springtime, and the world would be different. There's going to be some major changes in this world. They have to be. But it's not a bad time.
Does knowing that give you peace?
You can ski and snowboard in the winter. You can be with your family. You can have a great fire. You can build a business. It's a great time. Don't be mad at the season. Use the season. But don't think that when it's bad, it's going to be bad forever. Or when it's good, it's going to be good forever. Life is cyclical. History is cyclical. So it's like you want to take advantage of the season you're in and have some perspective. If you were born in 1910, I think I shared this with you guys before, but for your listeners, if you're born in 1910, you don't have to be history buff. Just remember that first season of springtime is 20 years in your life, right? You're born in 1910. While you're growing up, we go through World War I. It's scary, but you're protected. You're not going to war, right? You're a kid. And some tough times, but then we win the war, we come back, and then there's this explosion of technology, just like now. In a short period of time, a few decades, we got radios, televisions, we got cars, we got airplanes. We have tremendous economic abundance after all that, right? It's a big fall. It's wonderful, the Roaring 20s. You're born in 1910, 1920, you're 10 years old. Right at 19, when you think you're gonna go party and have a car, have a great time. By the way, all those kids, they were called flappers. They're They were looked down on as a weak generation, like baby boomers and Xers look very often at millennials and Zs. Because truthfully, millennials and Zs are great human beings, but they don't know what pain is, because what they think is pain is when their internet doesn't work and they can't get the instance of their fingers. So they don't know. I'm not being derogatory, it's just they don't know, but they're going to, because history's cyclical. So what happened to those people? They turned 19 years old in 1929. People are jumping out of buildings. The economy drops through the floor. The middle of the country's a dust bowl. People are standing in line for bread. Those weak-ass kids became incredibly strong. And they made it through 10 years of depression. It wasn't, when I say winter, it's not like it's bad every day. It's just the overall theme is fear. The overall theme is overreaction. And so if you know what happened to depression, there were some good times in the middle of the depression and then bad times, right? The overall theme was painful. What was their reward for 10 years of making it through a depression and getting strong? By the time they're 29, it's 1939 and World War II breaks out, and you and I weren't alive then, but it looked like Hitler was gonna win. He was strafing countries and taking them over in days. He was bombing London. It looked like the end of the world, and those people volunteered to go fight for that. Those weak-ass kids became unbelievably powerful. They became known, they won the war, World War II, they came back and they were known as the greatest generation. And they created a new springtime.
This video is sponsored by a freaking beast of a product that I absolutely love, electric e-bike. Now, you guys always hear me talking about me riding my electric bikes, but there's a bike out there right now that is perfect for your wallet, perfect for your entertainment, perfect for literally everything. I'm talking about for traveling, right? You don't want to put it on a hitch. You want something that could fold and you could put it in your trunk, take to the beach, take to your mother's house, take it to somebody who likes bikes, but you're like, hey, let me unfold mine real quick, and then we could just ride together. You want one zippy, fast. You want one that has good durability, that's safe when you're riding. You want one that you could take everywhere, anywhere, at all times. Well, that's electricebike.com. Get hundreds of dollars in free accessories with your electric e-bike purchase, including America's best-selling e-bike, the XP 3.0. Visit electricebikes.com. That is LECTRICE bikes.com. If you're dyslexic like me, I'll write it right here for you. Please visit the website.
After the war, like we said, everybody was excited, all went well till Kennedy got shot, and then Martin Luther King, and then Robert Kennedy, and we went into a hot summer. But think about the 70s and 80s and how they were different than the 90s and 2000s or 2010s. And listen, after 9/11 and after 2008, we're in winter. Winter has some tough economic times, and winter usually has war, some significant war. We're probably gonna have at least a cyber war with China. We already have one, but one that's more extreme, and we're all gonna have to grow from it. So I think millennials and Zs are the new hero generations. They just haven't gotten there yet. They're getting prepared because of the technology they know how to use, and they know how to network and communicate, all the good things. They've got good values within themselves. When the real tough times come, they're gonna get incredibly strong, and they're gonna change society in a really beautiful way. It's on the verge of happening as we speak. That's what I mean by good times create weak people create bad times create strong people create great times. That's really, you can go through century after century, 1,000 years of Roman history, and you'll see the same pattern.
Knowing that could give you peace, though.
That's my point. When you recognize patterns, it's not chaos anymore. You go, oh no, this has happened before. Okay, this has a purpose, right? I mean, why would God create winter? Everything looks like it's freezing and dying. Well, you get rid of the old and only the strong survive, and then it creates a new season, the springtime, and new growth. If things didn't die, there would be no room for something new to grow. I'm gonna have my time, and I'm gonna have to leave this planet at some point. I don't look forward to it, but I do look forward to the fact that when I leave, hopefully, there'll be a lot of souls that I've contributed to in a meaningful way. I feel like life has tremendous meaning. If I died tomorrow, I get to feel that way. But I also know that, hey, wow, someone else is going to take this spot. Someone else is going to have new ways of doing this. Someone's going to do it better. Someone's going to stand on the shoulders of the people before them, just like I stood on the shoulders of people before me. And I see the beauty in those seasons of life. And so what it allows me to do is enjoy what season I'm in, rather than saying, oh my God, there's only so many years left.
Beautifully said. Amen. You reap what you sow.
Without a doubt.
Before we tap into the new things that you're sowing.
Yeah.
I'm a new engaged man.
Yes, I know that. Congratulations.
Thank you. Awesome. I appreciate it. And there's a lot of men right now that, I feel like the 30s are the new 20s, right? So there's a lot of men Why'd you laugh at that?
Well, because
You don't think I look 20?
No, I'm not looking bad. It's just we got more people living at home at 30 years old than any time in history, including the Depression. And so I'm looking forward to seeing those people pushed into a life where they get to grow again, because you can't be happy when everyone else takes care of you and you do nothing. It might feel good for a while, might feel comfortable, but you don't have any pride. I don't mean pride like ego pride. I mean, like when people talk about self-esteem, I hate that term. It's so bullshit overused. People think, well, no one treated me well. They said these terrible things to me, so I have terrible self-esteem. No. Like, how can you remember only that? People said good things too, but you remember those things conveniently, right? Someone can tell your whole life you're a piece of crap, you're worthless, and some part of you can go, you know what, I'm gonna show you, and you go out there and crush it in the world, right? Someone can tell you your whole life you're beautiful, you're brilliant, you're amazing, you're the best on earth, and you'd feel insecure because you know you're not. It's not what people say to you. The only way you get self-esteem, which means esteem for yourself, is by doing incredibly difficult things, and you know you pushed yourself through it. And then there's an inner pride that no amount of money, no amount of accolades can match. Because you can take away everything I, quote, have things, you can't take away who I've become as a man. That's something, it doesn't matter whether you know and I know. You know, my children know.
I want to jump into this before I jump into the engagement thing, because this is actually, I grew up in a house where my parents sat me down and they're like, when you turn 18, well, they used to say, we're not Amerikaya. And a Syrian means we're not American, which is weird because we were American and I was in America. So imagine growing up in the fucking house that I had. I would get grounded for failing English and be yelled at in broken English. Like, bro, like, you know what I mean? Like, you fucking come do this homework, guys. You're my example. You want to know why I'm failing? You guys. But they would be like, we're not Amerikaya. When you're 18, this will always be your home.
That's beautiful.
I left when I was 21. But in my culture, we never were like, hey, when you're 18, you're a man, get out of the house. That's scary when you think of that. My parents always encouraged me to go be my man, but they always reassured me that I'd always have a home. Yeah. And even when I go to their house, I'm like, oh, I'm going to my mom's house. They'd yell at me, this is your house. Stop saying it's your mom's house. I go, I'm 31 years old, Mom. I have 2 places now. I don't even have one. You can keep this house, you know? And they'll be like, no, this is your home. And I think we need to... For the Amerikayas, the Americans, I think they need to stop telling their kids that they're men at 18. Even though they are men, it's...
Well, we don't have any kind of ritual of transition anymore for that. In many cultures in the world, you have to do something at that age that makes you a man. You have to get up and leave the tribe. You have to go out, go on the hunt. You have to jump off that pole and survive. They have all kinds of rituals that make this transition to being a man and not just a boy. Now, I think keeping the boy alive in you and the man is important. I think they're both important parts of ourselves.
Childlike heart.
Yeah. So, but I think we're missing that piece. So just say somebody's a man because they're 18 or 21 doesn't mean anything today, because there's no challenge, there's no push, there's no requirement for you to be able to stand on your own 2 feet completely. But I think it's beautiful. With my kids, I've told them all, you are loved. I've told them every way you can. You're loved, you'll be loved forever. You'll always have me in your corner. My respect you have to earn. My love you have. My respect you have to earn. It's different. Because I don't respect you if you sit on your ass and don't do anything. You don't contribute to society. You don't find a way to give back. I mean, life is not here, so we just get everything. I think that's the mistake in a relationship, by the way. In the beginning of a relationship, every relationship's easy because it's all chemistry. So everything's perfect and easy. When the chemistry wears off because you run into a problem with your child or in your business or somebody gets ill or something, then what happens is the polarity, the opposite energies often become the same. Both people get masculine to deal with the problem or both get feminine. And there's no alternate energy. You got North and South Pole. Opposite energies create life. You put a plug in, opposite energy creates that electricity. So when we lose that in a relationship, it's also usually because we're looking for someone there to give us something. A relationship's a place you go to give, not to get.
Serve.
And if you really go to serve in a relationship, then you're never going to feel empty because the love you express, you feel. But if you're waiting for someone to meet your needs every moment, it's a very different experience. So I just think that life is calling to us to bring something to life. We're responsible to life for something. It's not life is responsible to us.
Yep.
And unfortunately, our culture, and COVID did this as well. You know, 2008, somebody young may not remember, but it was a brutal time for people financially in business. The difference is the government didn't send you a check. So you had to figure out what the hell to do. This time, now no one wants to go to work. Why should I have to drive to work? Why should I have to work 9 to 5? Why? because it's how you develop skills and character so you can be free and add value and do other things, but because you're here not just to get. But now when people think they're just here to get, they're miserable. You see all the studies right now, people are more unhappy than ever been in their work, and they don't want to go to work. And by the way, some jobs are better at home. I understand that. You're right, code or something, it might be better. But the ones at home are complaining they don't like their work because they feel lonely and separated. Because life is not about making it easy. Life is the hero's journey. You need to be called. And if you don't get called now, eventually you're going to get called by something. Life or God or the universe will step in and kick your ass to wake you up. Now, some people, it takes a lot of kicking before they wake up. Some people never wake up. But the majority of people at some point are going to wake up. The question was, you stay awake. I don't mean woke, I mean awake. Awake to the fact that you're responsible to life for something more than just your needs being met. And I think when people do that, life is rich because it's meaningful, because it isn't just me, it's we.
You wrote a line saying you can either make a living or create a life.
Yes, design and create a life, exactly. Most people just make a living to get caught up in that pattern. That's the river I was talking about. You get caught up in the river of life, you don't know where you're going, and you get caught up in the current problem, current challenges, current people around you. And then you get to the fork in the river and you don't decide, you just go with the flow. Well, where the majority's going is not usually the best place to go, right? So you'd almost doing the opposite would almost be better for the most part. And then all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're in a boat with no paddles 5 feet from Niagara Falls and you go, oops, that's a little late. So you got to decide, what is my life going to be about? I don't even know my perfect mission and purpose, but what do I want my life essence to be about? Don't make it so it has to be worded perfectly. It's just like, what am I here to do? I'm here to love, I'm here to grow, I'm here to give, I'm here to laugh, I'm here to learn, I'm here to honor. What am I here for? And I think when people start to tap into that, which people do when they get in peak states, that's what I do, why I do seminars, by the way. Books are fantastic for learning, educating, and so forth, but there's nothing like an event. Because when you go to an event for 12 hours, it's like if I said to you, you're going to learn a language and you're going to learn a little bit at a time in college or high school and people don't speak the language. I drop you in Italy for 90 days with no teacher. I'll come back in 90 days, you're speaking Italian because you're in immersion. So I do immersion with people, but I also do it when I put people in peak states, like we talked about, biochemical states. And in those states, you get answers. But when you're like, I don't know, that's my purpose. In this state, you will never discover it, right? You're going to discover it by not having the perfect answer. It's like a business. You know, people say, don't put the cart before the horse. I was interviewing a guy a couple days ago for a group of entrepreneurs I work with around the world. And he created a company, he created diapers.com. And he went online and saw there were 200,000 views for diapers and no one was selling them. So he figured out how to do that and grew it, sold it for $500 million to Amazon. And then he built something called jet.com, which he sold to Walmart in 1 year. 1 year of business for $3.3 billion, right? Just a genius guy. But one of his philosophies is put the cart before the horse. In other words, get your ass in the game. You got an idea? Put it on the line. Don't sit and analyze it and work it all out. Try it. What doesn't work, change so you get where you want to go. That's the game that is life. Life is calling to you to get in the game. If you get in the game, you're going to have a time of your life. You're going to love life. When people say, I'm bored, or this is so boring, I can remember a day I was bored. The only way you can be bored is put yourself in such a lousy state over and over again that your brain is bored with everything. But if you're looking to serve something more than yourself, then you got to learn, you got to grow, and you'll feel a sense of alignment that comes from that. That's the game. Grow and give. If you do those two things, you're going to have a magnificent life. If you don't, it doesn't matter. You could have $1 billion and a million people loving you, and you won't love yourself.
Circling back to the reap and sow, because this is going to follow what you're just saying.
Sure.
I want to make sure that I'm a husband who serves, right? So I got engaged, and I didn't just make a promise to her father. I made a promise to God. And what I've monitored about myself and a lot of great people is that they want to serve their family, and they try so hard that they serve their family into the grave. By example, you wrote about a book, in your book you wrote that a man will come home exhausted from work, and when he sees his loving wife out there, he trains his brain that when he was sad and angry and frustrated, he's correlating both his wife and his pain.
That's right. It has nothing to do with her. If you're in a lousy state and then you see your wife or husband or boyfriend or girlfriend or children even, in a lousy state about your work or something else, and you do that over and over again, they get linked together. And you look at, one day you have a great day, you look at them and you feel pissed off or you feel overwhelmed or you feel stressed. So that's why it's so important to learn how to manage your own psychological, emotional state. It's like if you can learn to live in a beautiful state of mind, that's the greatest gift you could give your wife besides your love, is that no matter what happens, shit's gonna happen in your life. There's gonna be stuff that's really tough. There's gonna be stuff that seems impossible. I'm glad you came to this positive conversation, but it's true, right? But how you deal with that is everything. I used to think, well, man, when I get pissed off, my brain gets so sharp and I come up with answers. That's true. But when I'm really happy, my brain comes up with answers even faster and I'm a lot easier to be around, Other people wanna be around you. So it's like, I've learned to train myself. I'm not perfect. It's not like I won't get pissed off or frustrated, overwhelmed, or stressed. It's just, I give myself 90 seconds and I kick my ass out of it because that will not serve anyone I love. Then they take on worried about you or worried about the situation. It's like, no, everything's solvable. It might take more time than we want, but we're gonna solve this. But in the meantime, we're gonna live in a beautiful state because there's so much that grace and that God has given us, and we need to appreciate that. And then we'll figure out these things. Problems are a sign of life. I remember I met Norman Vincent Peale when he was 92 years old. He wrote the original, he's a minister, he wrote Power of Positive Thinking, and I was 32. He invited me up to Canada. He was doing a seminar, and my career was starting to take off. So I got a chance to go meet him. I went backstage with him, and I remember saying to him, I said, he said, call me Norman. I said, Norman, I said, I just curious. I said, why are you still doing seminars at 92? And he goes, well, there's still a few negative people out there. But okay, I got 60 more years of this going forward, right? But then I asked him, I said, when he started out, it was horse and buggy. He's seen rock, radio, television, cars. I mean, imagine what he saw in his lifetime in that century. I said, what's the most important lesson that people need to have? He said, they need to understand the power of problems. And I said, what do you mean? He said, well, the only people without problems are people in cemeteries. I said, I think I heard that somewhere. He said, I said that in 1940, whatever, 6 or something, right? He goes, but they don't give my full quote. My full quote was, the only people without problems are in cemeteries. So if you don't have any problems, you should get on your knees and beg for some and pray for some right now, because problems are a sign of life. And he said he was sitting at a table one day with Gene Tunney, who was the heavyweight boxer of the world in the 40s, I guess, or 50s. I'm not old enough to remember when it was. And he said they were both speakers and they were on this dais and having lunch right before the speech. And he's buffed out like crazy. He's an unbelievable muscular specimen. And so Norman said, I turned to him and said, how do you get muscles like that? And he said, Gene turned to him and said, do you really want to know or are you just asking? He thought to himself, I really was just asking, but now I really do want to know. So he goes, no, I really want to know. And he goes, every day I push against unbelievably intense resistance, and that's what sculpts and builds these muscles. And Norman sat there for a little bit, and he said, I thought about it, and he goes, I think that's why God gives us problems, because by pushing through those, we sculpt our souls. I never forgot that. So it's like, your goal, you're never gonna get rid of problems. If you're in business, you have problems. You might call them challenges, but they're problems. But what makes you a leader is you solve them quickly. And the goal is just get better quality problems. I remember when Apple was trying to be able to, sell something, they're going bankrupt. And then all of a sudden they come up with the iPod and, music, and pretty soon they didn't have enough of them. It's a new quality problem. People are suing them because they scratch too easily, but they're making $1 billion. It's a new problem. It's a better quality problem for their business.
It's a good problem to
have those. We're all gonna have problems, but they're just opportunities for growth. They're that call to adventure. It's the hero's journey. And by the way, you and your wife will have that experience.
No, we're perfect.
Not yet.
No problems. I'm just kidding. No.
No, but wait, there's a season to relationship. Can I just give it to you for a second?
Please.
First season, somewhere in 3 to 5 years. Varies for people, most 7. Huge chemistry, and everything seems to be perfect and easy, and you have the best relationship in the world, and everybody envies you because you still have polarity, and if things go well, you have so much attraction. When you're attracted to somebody, you make everything great. Everything you say is great. But then there's some days where you'll start to gradually, as time goes by, run into challenges. May not even be each other. And you deal with those challenges and the frustration around each other, and some of that feeling gets in there, and maybe she starts to say, man, why does he always say that? Or you think, why can't she ever get ready? Why are we always late? Little shit that you feel a little resistance to. But if you don't solve it, it'll start to build over the time until the resistance starts to be a little bit of rejection, right? And then you might start saying something and it doesn't feel fair. And then some people just go into depression and they stay in a relationship 20 years and they have 2 different lives and they live together, but they're really not there, right? That first season usually is pretty easy. And then you start bumping into things that are different, and that's what makes us grow. But some people think the purpose of relationship is pleasure, and it's not pleasurable anymore,
Partnership.
so they're out. That's most people. The second season, so that's springtime. Summer is more of a test. Summer is you run into some real problems. Your kid gets ill, or you have a kid, or something's gone wrong with the business, or there's something going on in the economy, or COVID, and you're both individuals, and so you're trying to still meet your own needs, and so the battles get stronger, and a lot of people leave there. They go, they're not in it for me. They're not here for me. It's me still. Where the world transforms is when you go from conditional love to unconditional love, right? When you go into the third season of life, that's usually, somebody's usually at least in their 40s, quite honestly, and now you are so in love, it's eternal love, you know it's love, you've been through shit together, you grew together, you expanded together, you kept coming closer and closer together, and now problems will still show up. Maybe one of your parents gets Alzheimer's. Maybe there's some new challenge to the business, but you solve it together and it's a we, and there are no conditions to your love. It's like most people have great relationships with their kids because they know they're not going to leave them, but that man or woman may leave me. So if your kid, you don't have one yet, but if your kid killed somebody, you wouldn't support it, but you'd still love them.
Yeah.
But people say in a relationship, if you ever do this, then I'm out of here. That's conditional love. When you get the third season, you're past all that shit. You just love that person's soul, and you will still have problems, but you solve them together. And then the fourth season is the final winter time of your life, and that's where, as the years go by, the body starts to break down and the soul starts to ascend, and one of you will pass. And if the love is that deep, if you've gone through all the seasons, you have the privilege of whether you go first or they goes first, of knowing it's eternal love. And it's something beyond imagination. It brings tears to my eyes because I have the privilege of having that with my wife after 24 years. Most incredible soul that I could ever dream of having. I thank God every day because I go like, I help millions of people, and my gift was he gave me this woman in my life. And I will probably go before her because I'm older than she is. She may go before me. I don't relish the moments of that time, but it just makes everything more precious because you know time is limited. Now, I'll be 64 in a month, so I'm still a young man, but I have a lot of friends that have died in their 60s and some in their 50s and some in their 70s. So you start to realize there's a point in your life and you're not there where you will hit what they call middle age. And here's how you know you're middle age. You'll realize there may be more days behind me than ahead of me. I had my 60th birthday 4 years ago. We had this big party and raised a bunch of money to save children. It was really wonderful. Children were trafficked, raised $19 million. Great party. I didn't want to do a party, but when we did it with a purpose, we did it. And one of my friends got up, who's now 80 years old, and he goes, welcome to midlife. He goes, then again, I don't know many 120-year-olds. And so when you look and you go, the racetrack of life only has so much time, it makes it more valuable.
I was going to ask, now that you know that and it brings you tears in your eyes, the moment that you're with your wife means a lot more.
Every moment means it.
Yeah.
So you don't have to wait till you're that stage. If you know what the racetrack looks like, and by the way, it's the same for everyone. Most people don't make it to the fourth level, as you well know, or even the third level. But with your sense of grace and gratitude and love and your desire to serve your wife, not just get from your wife, I believe you've got that opportunity. But if you know where it is, you get there quicker. You don't have to go through some of the other things. You can get to the we part. You can get to the unconditional love part so much more rapidly. The biggest problem in relationships today is everybody thinks you're supposed to meet my needs, right? And no, that's not how it works. In a relationship, you can have one of two things. You're going to have, like, people talk about toxic masculine. There's toxic masculine, toxic feminine. It's somebody who thinks I'm getting what I want or I'm out of here. So some men are demanding. Some women will use their sensual ways to get whatever they want. And if they don't get it, they're out of here. Some men, this is what I'm doing, I'm out of here. It's an immature person. The second stage is equality. Okay, you do your part, I do my part. That's a transaction. And it sounds really good because it sounds egalitarian. On the surface it is, but then there's no opposite energies and there's no passion. So you have two people that are good friends and they live together, but they don't really have any passion.
Those are the people that say, oh, it works, so I stick around.
Yeah.
There's
And
no passion.
But there's a third level, and the third level is your needs are my needs.
Amen.
Instead of, I can't make you feel this way, I'll do whatever it takes to meet your needs, because that's what lights me up. My wife and I have that experience. It's like the fights we have are play fights. I'm trying to do something for her. No, she's trying to do it for me. And we get in this play fight, and it's fun, but that's a quality problem to have, right? It's a different thing. But you can get there faster if you know what the target is.
Yeah.
You don't have to take so long. You know, some seasons, some winters are long, some are short, right? You can speed up the seasons if you know where you're going. Again, it's pattern recognition, pattern utilization, and maybe pattern creation.
And it's a powerful tool when you know how to use other people's patterns so you don't have to make that mistake.
That's right.
So when I was in the industry and I just started getting a lot of money and a lot of recognition, the first thing that everybody that loved me was, hey, dude, what are you doing in a relationship? And it was new. So they're kind of like, hey, dude, like, you know, even people that are very close to me, they're like, dude, if I was you, I would be doing this, I'd be doing that. And if you have enough love, people that you love tell you something, you kind of start like questioning it. And so I realized that I was like, monogamy started getting harder because I'm like, oh yeah, like one girl, this is my prime. What if this doesn't work? And then I just wasted all of that time. And then you start thinking about your past relationship. You're like, well, I thought she was the one, but then she cheated on me and da-da-da-da-da.
And by the way, watch what's happening. Are you in your mind or your heart when this is going on?
I'm in my mind.
The mind will always mess you up. Get in your head, you're dead.
Yep.
In a relation, once you get in your head, it's over. You got to come back to your heart. When I say heart, like literally, they've proven this physiologically. If you put your hands on your heart and you breathe and imagine breathing into your heart for 2 minutes, and you think of three things you're grateful for. This is a process that was developed. It changes your entire biochemistry. And then all of a sudden, you'll have a whole different answer. Things you can't solve, you're all stressed out about. I'll say, okay, great. Put your hands on your heart. Breathe. Feel the breath going in and out. And I'll say, think of a moment you're really grateful for, but don't think of it over there. Step into the moment like you're there. It could be a little moment. 2 or 3 of those moments, their entire biochemistry. Now I'll say, okay, that problem that seems so unsolvable, answer this for me. Stay in state, not in your head, in your heart, and tell me. Finish this sentence while you're breathing in your heart. All I need to remember, all I need to focus on in that situation, all I really need to do is what? All I need to remember, all I need to do is what? And people get the answer immediately, because you can see biochemically. You know how you can measure your brain's electrical impulses and your heart, EKG, EEG. When you see somebody who's stressed out or pissed off or angry, you can see these do not match. They're up and down and all around. When you do this for 2 minutes, they literally unify and make a perfect symbol of the same, because now your heart and your brain work together. And when you were born, or not when you were born, when you were in your mother and we knew you were alive, how do we know you were alive? Heartbeat, right? Now guess what? As long as that's beating, you got life. There was no brain when that heart started beating. So your heart has its own intelligence and it affects your brain. But if you only use your mind, you're screwed in a relationship. You're screwed in just about anything. The mind is a tool that should be used. Don't let it use you. It's like technology. Today, people let technology use them. They get addicted. They're not in control of it. It's like it's a whole different game. Use your brain. Your brain will never give you fulfillment. Your mind won't.
Yeah.
Only your heart will do that. Your brain won't even allow you, your mind won't even allow you to enjoy an apple to go, is it organic? It's like, so if you're going to enjoy your life, you got to learn how to bring this back and not let this control you, because our society keeps pushing us here. And ego brings us here.
Yep.
Because it's always comparing something.
And the people that were giving me that advice were egotistical maniacs. And so...
Well, they're growing, they're learning, they're young. We all have to
Some
learn.
of them weren't. Some of them were married.
Oh,
and
they're young in their development.
So my whole thing is like I bring it to God. So I heard all this. I read Proverbs. That day I read, a good woman is the best gift from God. And so I go, okay. So I sat back and I looked at everyone who gave me advice. And I'm like, they're this age and they're still chasing tail. And no offense, you look like a creep at the club. Yeah. And then I go, okay, well, what do I want? And I go, well, I want a family and I want a girl that... When I looked at Bella, I knew she was the one, because when I looked at her, I pray to God. I go, this is the first woman that if my kids turned out like her, I'd praise my God until I pass away.
That's beautiful.
So when I held on to this, I go, okay, well, if there is a devil, I guarantee you if he saw a beautiful gift from God, he's going to fill it with lies so I could get rid of it, because he can't touch what God gave me. And so I sat there and I go, God, if this is the problem, I go, remove me from the industry then, or make me a man who could stand strong here, supporting my wife and loving her like my church. And dude, I'm gonna sound like a crazy man, but it was just overnight. I started looking at women differently overnight.
Yeah.
I started looking at women that were doing OnlyFans, and I was like, okay, like instead of me looking at them like, well, if I was single, I would, you know. Now it's just kind of like, well, why is this woman in this position, and how can I get her out of it? And it all flipped for me, and I just feel so sad that there is people like me that don't have wisdom to fall on to get them out of a situation. Because if I was a dummy. When I proposed to my girlfriend, I was sobbing. And when I was sobbing, people were probably like, oh my God, he's happy about this. What I was sobbing about is God saved me from a decision that if I would have made, bro, all the money in the world. The day before I proposed to my girlfriend, we were on a bike. And I kept yelling at her. I go, hey, you're getting reckless because you're getting comfortable. I go, stop. You're going to hurt yourself. Still like an airhead, she's freaking trying to do jumps with no helmet. And so I'm riding a bike, and we're on Bell Street, ironically. And in my head, I swear you could ask her this. This is legit. I'm riding my bike, and I see her fall into the street and get hit by a car. And I turn around to tell her, hey, I just had a thing. And before I can even mention it, she's in the street with the bike on her because she crashed, and she's in the street exactly like how I saw it. And in that moment, I know it sounds crazy, but in those type of moments, everything freezes, like everything freezes. And I knew in that moment when I saw that girl there and I'm running toward her, I literally told God, I go, you could remove my health, remove everything, but don't let a hair come off of her head. And I'm running, and in my mind when I'm picking her up, and she doesn't even know I'm about to propose, but imagine me carrying a ring on me all the time. And if this could have happened and I never even got to show her how much I loved her, all I kept thinking about was, I almost gave away something that I would now give away everything for. That wasn't my thoughts, man. That's the enemy's thoughts.
Yeah. Well, guess what? There'll be a stage in your life in the future when you'll have children, and then you'll have this experience at another level, and then grandchildren. Yeah. And so, you know, I've got 5 kids and 5 grandkids, and my oldest daughter is going to be 49 in a month, and my youngest is 2 3/4. She's going to be 3 in a couple months. So I got 5 grandkids. My daughter is, you know, she's the what do you call it? The auntie to my grandchildren, and they're older than she is. There's nothing like love within a family, whether it be your intimate love or your children. And those are all the beautiful things that are ahead of you. And a lot of people miss out on that because they get caught up in the society that keeps teaching them that they're not enough, so they got to try and prove it by buying something or doing something. Listen, buy and do whatever you want in your life, but this is the essence of where life is most fulfilled. And without it, all that other shit doesn't mean anything, you know?
I don't want kids. The reason why is, like, I'm gonna have kids, obviously, because like that's what you do with life. I don't want kids for one reason only. I'm terrified that I can't protect them at the same time, all the time. Because when I saw her in the street, I go, my God, you know what? She's the most clumsy person. And I fell in love with that. She's the most clumsy human. And I was like, oh, that's so cute. Until I fell in love with her. I'm like, yo, this is dangerous. You're your biggest problem, dog. Like, you need to figure it out. And like, I get mad at her. I'm like, yo, you need to stop bumping your head. And then she's cutting for food. She cuts her finger. I'm like, yo, pay attention, dog. And it's like, to me, it's like, yo, she's a full-blown adult. I'm going to punch my kid in the face if he scares me like this. Like, what am I going to do, bro? Put a chain on him, lock him up here? Like,
no. You're going to develop more faith. You know it's true. Because my wife, Billy's here. Is that not a perfect description of my wife? My wife is crazy.
What did I say?
She's
I
always
said this
breaking things. She's always dropping things. And it used to freak me out. My daughter, you know, is a little less than that, but she models her mother to some extent. But there's a point in which you have to put your trust in something more than yourself, because you're not God and you can't be there every moment. But what you can do is you can love them, you can be for them, you can arm them, you can help them with skills and abilities, and you can be there when they're most needed. But there's no guarantee in life. And who's to say when it's somebody's time to go? You and I don't know that. So most people aren't going to have kids right now because they're missing what's called a compelling future. That's what you need. anybody can deal with the difficult today if they have a compelling tomorrow. It doesn't matter. But right now, people are being told that the whole earth is going to be gone in 12 years, and the earth's going to be fine. You may not be here if you don't get your act together, but the earth's going to be fine. It's total bullshit. But when you hear enough of that over and over again, or you think, I've never been a parent, I've never been responsible, but that will all evolve for you as it does for, not for everyone, but it will for you. And the reason I say it will for you is I can't say for sure, but the path you're on is a path of humble inquiry. And when you're constantly curious and inquiring and you want to grow and you want to expand, your life is going to be extraordinary because it'll just keep unfolding more and more. And you're 31, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you got decades ahead of you that you have no idea of, both challenge and opportunity and new mentors and new experiences and family. And I mean, I'm excited for you. You know, I'll have a little ticket to your parade. Since you're public, I get to watch and see some of the beautiful things you're doing. And I enjoy that because you're a good human being.
I appreciate that. You got something amazing happening actually very soon.
Yes.
You have a summit, you have a book.
Yes.
What are you more excited about?
Oh my gosh, excited about both. Let me mention the summit first because it's so easy. So if people are watching, you know, I normally do like 4 days, 12 hours a day with, 15, 20,000 people in a stadium type of thing. And when COVID happened, they shut down all the stadiums and I wanted to serve people. So I finally said, I want to do something for people all over the world because I usually do things in, 195 countries across the world. I want to do something that costs no money for anybody and they don't have to travel because they couldn't. And so I want to eliminate all the barriers in their home while they're here in the middle of COVID. I wanted them to see they can still take control of the quality of their life. And so I said, I'm going to do a seminar and we'll do some of it on Zoom and YouTube. We'll figure out how to do the piece. I built this studio, 25,000 square feet with 20-foot high LED screens, 0.67, highest resolution
in your home,
in the world.
yeah?
No, not in my home. I have some things in my home too. This is a separate studio I built. And I said, I'm going to build this studio and I went to the guys who founded Zoom and I said, I need more than 1,000 people. I need 25,000 people, And I built some software so that when people, instead of clapping, they just shake their phone, it sends an electric signal. So if one person does it, you don't hear anything. But when 20,000 people do it, it's like thunder. And then I could bring people up larger than life and interact with them. But I never thought it'd be as great as it could be, meaning I now do these events where I used to do 10, 15, 20,000 people. Now they're 40,000 people. And then I started to do this free event. And last year we had 1.5 million people from 195 countries, every country in the world. So it's called Summit, and it's called the Time to Rise Summit. If people want to go, it's timetorisesummit.com, timetorisesummit.com. There's no charge for it whatsoever.
Why though? Why is there no charge?
Because I just want to do something that gives people some real tools right now that they don't even know they can have. And a lot of people are like, I don't know if I can do that. I don't want to go there, because the mind gets involved. But when you give people a direct experience, it's true. And they can do it from their home. And I'm really proud because, we've had people, we had a guy 2 years ago, for example, this is like how extreme it is. He never would have gone to my seminars. You know why? He weighed 700 pounds, had not left his bed for 6 years, couldn't get up to go to the bathroom, on oxygen, told he'd never be off that the rest of his life. And somebody sent him the link and said, you got to see this Tony Robbins guy. It's amazing. And you've never been able to go to an event. I've told you about him. You don't read his books, come have an experience. So he flipped it up on his TV and his computer, and he watched the thing, and he was so moved, and I happened to call on him. I didn't know what was going on, but there's all these people, and I call on people and do interactions. And so saw him in bed there, he had a sheet on, but he's been naked for 6 years in that bed. His brother died, and then he injured himself, and he got put on medication, and then had all these complications, right? And so I talked to him about, it seems impossible, but this can be changed, just a little step at a time. And here, I'm going to give you a little assignment. Here's how we're going to get you on the path. Figure out what you want. Because when you think about the path, the first step, instead of New Year's resolutions that nobody fulfills, if you want to say, how am I going to make my year great? The first step is, are you on the path? Meaning, when you feel like you're on the path to accomplishing what you want, achieving what you want with your body or your business or your relation, And if you're not on the path, the first step is getting crystal clear on what you really want. Because desire, that's when something our Creator gives us, desire of the Father. Desire is how every story starts. If you watch a movie, the first thing you'll meet is the main protagonist. You'll see, they want to get rid of all the bad guys. Oh no, they want to become one with God. Oh no, they want 3 perfect children. Your current gross desire, most desired component, is what's driving the story of your life. So in the area of your life you want to improve, your body, your emotion, your relationship, what is it you want most? That's what we want to know first. And then why do you want it? Because you can say, I want this, but if you don't have enough reasons, you're not going to follow through when it gets difficult. So when you have that, you're on the path. What's the second step? The second step on that path is you got to find and face the truth. And the truth is there's a gap between where you are and where you want to be. And I used to say things like, well, I'm big bone. That's why I was 38 pounds heavier. I'm the same bones as I had then, right? I'm 30 pounds lighter. But, people have these stories. So we got to figure out what stops you. And so there's only 5 things that stop people. Fear of failure, fear of success, fear of not looking good, fear of the unknown. That'll stop you. Or maybe it's a limiting belief. You developed a belief like, I've tried everything. No, you haven't. You tried everything, you'd be fit, but once you believe that, you don't try anything anymore. Or all the good ones are gone, relationship-wise, right? And that's not true. But once you have a belief like that, you don't even go for it anymore. It's become self-fulfilling. Or the third problem might be you have some other emotion that gets in the way, like let's say stress or depression or sadness or self-pity. That'll put brakes on your progress and stop you. Or fourthly, you might be in a position where you have some bad habits, right? You want to lose 20 pounds, but the first thing you do in the morning is go to Starbucks and have a smoke a mocha, whatever the hell that shit is, and eat it all up. You're never going to get there.
Bad patterns.
Versus a habit of the first thing I do is get up and I jump in the water, I work out, whatever it is. Once you make it a habit, it's easy. Or last one, you might be missing the skill. Like lots of people want to be financially free, but they don't have the first clue and they don't think it's possible today. It's total bullshit. Anyone can do it if you follow the pattern of people to do it, right? But if you don't have the skill, you don't have the skill to manage through a relationship challenge. You don't have the skill to manage your body when it's overweight. It's a skill. So one of those 5, you face the truth. And now you go to the third step, and what do? You come up with a massive action plan, a MAP. That's what it stands for, massive action plan. It isn't perfect. You don't wait to have everything there. You get enough to know what to do and you act. You put the cart before the horse. You do something, you get in the game. And then while you do that, while you're doing that, you go to the next step, which is you do what's hard. You slay your dragons. You push through the fear. That doesn't mean you're not fearful. It means you have courage. You are scared, but you do it anyway, and then you figure out how to do it, right? Or you change that BS belief system that you have in your head that's stopping you. You do the work that's necessary. And then the last 3 are the easy steps. Now you just have a daily practice, so it's easy. You get the right rhythms. You don't have to think about it. You measure more often. Because like if you have a business, if you don't measure, you're not managing it. If you weigh yourself once a year, you might discover you're 20 pounds overweight. But if you weigh yourself once a month, if you measure your business once a week, you're not going to have bad months, you're not going to have bad years. The more you measure, the more you're in control. And the last thing you do is you got to celebrate the victory. And then guess what happens? Life will give you the next call from the next challenge. But there's more of you now, and you're more confident now because you've conquered something of that nature. So what I do in these events is I do 3 days. It's coming up January 25th through the 27th, 2 p.m. Eastern, but people join us from all over the world in every time zone. And I'm going to take people for about 2.5 to 3 hours and give them these skills that'll change their energy, change their momentum, shift and figure out what emotions are getting in the way, put together the plan for their finance, figure out what to do with their relationships. There's only a few areas that really matter. We're going to hit on those for 3 days in a row. Think of it like going to a movie, only the movie's your own life. And it's the comeback challenge. And as a result of it, now you're also part of a community of over 1 million people around the world all supporting each other. So I started to say with this guy I told you about, I got him to clear his desires. We figured out what's stopping him. We put a little map together, right? And the first thing he did is he took like this, how you hang your clothes on if you have a portable thing with a little really light piece of metal. He just sat there and did these initial push-up things, right? And he graduated more and more, and we set up a target for him. So 3 months later, he was off the oxygen, which they said he'd never be. He got to the restroom for the first time. 6 months later, he was in a car. He's now lost, 2 years later, 310 pounds. I said, you get in the car and drive, and I'll send you a ticket. You come to my summer, we'll walk on fire together, and we'll celebrate. He came and walked on fire. It's just one example. Or a woman has lost her child, and it's the most horrific thing you can imagine, but you've got to pick it up and go on. She had other children. And seeing her turn around, or seeing a guy that's struggling in his business, and he tripled the size of his business. So it's juicy. And now some people do that and they get excited and they want to learn more from me and come to seminars. So it's a great thing. They can become clients, but there's no push for them to have to do anything. It's just me saying, let me introduce you to what's possible. And I do it once a year, and it's the best karma in the world because I got the biggest seminars in history, and I got people all over the world in virtually every country that are making some kind of progress that I've gotten to contribute to. So I love it. So if people want to go, they can go to We call it the time to rise, because it's like time to take back control, time to rise up to who you really are, right? And take charge of your life. So it's the timetorise.com,
I'm going to put
and there's
that
no charge.
in the description so
That'd be
you guys
great.
could just click that button. You're walking people hand in hand to follow good patterns.
Exactly
So
right.
they could lead to a better potential.
That's right.
I highly recommend to do this, guys. Push away. Listen, if you have something on your plate right now and you truly with all of your heart feel like, yo, I felt like today, this is my year. I really need to do it this year, 2024. Just start with this. Literally start with this. It's super easy. You could do it on your laptop. You could do it on your phone. You could put
And you
your
can do it
little
with some
earbuds.
friends. You can do it at your house. You can do it at the office. You can bring some friends together and do it together if you want. That's kind of fun too.
It's free. It's
Or you can do it by
financially
yourself.
no burden.
Zero.
And it's something that could bring you to a place where if it was a financial thing, you wouldn't see it as a burden anymore.
Yeah, true.
What else is free is chapter 1 in your new book.
Yes.
Explain to me why.
Well, the book, this is my third financial book. I wrote personal development books in all these areas and obviously focused on finance as well. But in 2008, when I saw everything from my barber to my billionaire friends, everybody was affected by it. The world was upside down. And because I worked at that time, I still do, I was coaching a man named Paul Tudor Jones, one of the top 10 financial traders in history. Brilliant man, incredibly good-hearted man. I learned from him because I was coaching him, so I was learning along the way. And I knew it was happening in 2008. I knew it before it happened. And so I was like, man, I want to find a way to help people. I thought by 2010, the culprits would be in jail, but we took the people that almost destroyed the world economy and here's their punishment. We gave them more money. It was just crazy. So it made me angry. So I thought, I'm just one guy. What can I do? And I thought, I have one gift. I have access because of what I do. I'm going to interview 50 of the smartest financial people in the world, the greatest investors in history, all self-made billionaires. Nobody from the Lucky Sperm Club, nobody it was given to. And I'm going to find out, they're all different. I'm going to find out how they went from scratch to that and write this book. Well, it ended up being a 674-page monster, but it was the #1 New York Times bestseller, still the top seller in this industry for the last, for this century. It's only 24-year-old century.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. But then I wrote a second book because I knew obviously there was going to be a bear market. There was going to be a shift. I didn't know it was going to be based on COVID, but you can predict it's going to happen. I wanted people prepared. And then I thought it was done, but I learned a lot of things in that first book working with the smartest people in the world. I'll give your audience 4 of them just real fast. All these people, they all said, Tony, I want to know if the game was still winnable. Because people, a lot of the young people especially, think it's not winnable. The game is rigged and so forth. Well, some things are rigged, but it's not completely rigged, and you absolutely can win the game. And I got convinced of that by not what they told me, but by witnessing and learning from them all. But they're all different. Some are like macro investors, figuring out where the world's going. Some are buying for value and so forth. But they had 4 things in common that were really important. First, everybody, you can't become financially free until you stop being a consumer and become an owner. It's really simple.
Break that down for me.
You got an Apple phone there?
Yes, sir.
Do you own Apple stock?
Nope.
Why? That Apple phone is depreciating. It's going to be worthless in a year or 2, and you're going to want another one that goes away. If you own the stock, it's only gone up. So why wouldn't you want to own that thing where your phone is making you money as an owner too? Even your phone is and everybody else's is. You have to think like an owner. We're a society that's always consuming, and that doesn't add value. But if you can bring some of your little bit of your money, you take 10% of what you earn, you say, I can't save it, and you put it in an account where it's automated. You never see it. It's taken off the top. You'll adjust. I give an example in my book of this guy, Theodore Johnson. He worked for UPS in the 50s. He never made more than $14,000 a year in annual income. He retired with $70 million.
I'm sorry, what?
$14,000 a year in income, retired with $70 million. How in the hell is that possible?
Easy. He robbed the bank.
No, he didn't do any of those things. All he did is he had a friend that came by and said, I'm going to make you a wealthy man. He goes, I'll never be a wealthy man. He goes, no, we're going to take care of your future self and future family forever, and here's how we're going to do it. We're going to take 20%. It took a big chunk. He goes, what do you mean? We're going to take 20% off the top. You're never going to see it. We're going to put it in a separate account that'll be for investment. He goes, I can't live on $14,000. He goes, you will adjust. I promise you. He goes, I can't do it. He goes, if the government raised your taxes 20%, would you pay it? He goes, I'd scream and yell, but yeah, I'd pay it. He goes, well, this is a tax for you for the future, not for the government. And they did it. And they put it in stock. Most of it was UPS. And the value of it went to 70. He gave $35 million away while he was still alive. And then after he died, they gave away the other $35 million. Never made more than 14 grand. He was a really good guy, nice guy, but he became an owner. So people don't understand, if you have a kid and they're 19 years old, everybody hears about compounded growth, but they don't get it. Compounded growth is the most powerful thing in the world. You think, oh, I'm gonna get rich by making a fortune. You know how many actors, you know how many movie stars, you know how many singers, you know how many, athletes who made millions of dollars a year that are totally broke right now?
I know them by their name.
I
could call them right now.
Because what happened was they thought that's how you get wealthy. The way you get wealthy is you don't need a lot of money. You need a little bit of money that consistently goes to work for you while you're sleeping. And the first discipline is getting in the game. Then, okay, how do I know if I'm going to build a money machine? Right now, I'm a machine. I tell people, you're a financial trader. You may not call it that, but you're trading your time for money. That's a terrible trade because the one thing you can get more of is time. But you got to do that in the beginning. So you take a little bit of what you got, you start to put it in this little money machine where you build it up and invest it. And after a while, the money in that, the income from that money is more than you get from working. So now you don't have to work. By the way, the goal is not to work, because if you don't work, you'll be miserable. You got to do something. But the goal is to not have to work. Then you walk different, you talk different. I work harder today than I ever have, but I don't have to work.
It's a different feeling, man. You move differently.
Everything is different. So you want to build that money machine. So how do you do that? You take a percentage, you automate it, but where's that money going to go? And what are the principles? So I'll give you 4 real fast ones for people. The number one difference between the wealthiest people in the world and the average person is like, how do I make more money? How do I earn more money? And their number one focus is how not to lose it. And I know that sounds ridiculous because you go, I don't have much. But what they mean is they know if I invest in something because I'm all excited about it because everybody's talking about it, and it drops 50%, which can easily happen in a stock or some years in real estate as we've seen. If that happens, if I lose 50%, I got to make 100% to get even. So it's nice to say, Warren Buffett has a rule. He says, rule number 1, don't lose money. Rule number 2, see rule number 1. But,
hilarious.
But everybody is going to lose money at times. The way they keep from losing money is the second principle, which sounds big, but it's really simple. They call it asset allocation. It simply means that if you had $100, $1,000, $1 million, $100 million to invest, the most important decision is not whether you're going to put that in Apple or a piece of real estate. The most important decision is how are you going to consistently invest your money? There's 2 buckets you put your money in. Some of that money is going to go to a place that's low risk. Because it's low risk, it doesn't have as high a return, so it takes longer to get where you want to go, but it's like the turtle in the hare. It'll get there. The other bucket is the risk bucket. That's stuff like stocks, things that bonds might go, for example, insurance, some secure investments where you're guaranteed a return.
Yeah.
It's a low return, they go in that first bucket. The second bucket is that's the church one, that's your steeple, that's your home. The risk one is, okay, this might be stocks, this might be real estate, this might be anything that can go up, but it also can go down.
Yeah.
So there's risk there. What percentage of that money, whether it's $1,000 or 10 million, is going to go in the secure bucket versus the risk bucket? That's what you have to decide. And it's affected by a couple things. When do you need the money? If you're 20 or 30 years old, you have tons of time to make up for it if you make mistakes, so you can take more risk. If you're 60, even though you want more money, you're going to have more in your security bucket, because if you lose at this time, there's no time to make up for it, right? Another thing that affects it is how do you deal with risk? Some people take risks, no problem. Most people think they will, but they really aren't. But if you get stressed out, that affects it. Another one is how much cash flow do you have? If every dollar you make, you're spending, you don't have a lot of cash flow, you're going to have to look at the balance differently because you take as many risks. If you've got more money than you need a little bit, you might be able to take more risks. So you decide, is it 50-50? Is it 70-30? Is it 80-20? Depending on those. Really important. That's how they keep from losing, because they don't put everything at risk in a major way.
If you don't mind me asking, the first bucket where you said it's not that much of a risk, what is it that, what could you invest that doesn't have risk?
Everything has risk. It just has a lot less. So
less risk. Okay, like bonds. Where it's
would be
backed by
perfect
the government. Okay. Sorry. Because in my mind, I'm like, my man, do you know something that I don't know? Because all my money's going in that. I am the turtle. I am slow but steady.
But if only slow and steady, you don't take any risk, it'll take you a long time. So it's this balance, right?
Of course.
So at 31, your numbers are going to be different than somebody at 61, let's say, for example. So you don't lose money by having the right asset allocation. And the third one is much more interesting. Most people think that people that are billionaires, they took these giant risks and they won. And rarely is that true. Those billionaires don't stay billionaires usually.
Yeah.
The best in the world all practice another big word. It's called asymmetrical risk reward. Simple concept, big words. It just simply means they try to take the least amount of risk humanly possible with the most upside. So I'll give you an example. I coached Paul Tudor Jones for all these years, and when he was at his best, he was having challenges, and I learned what he's doing at his best, got him to do it again. He wouldn't make an investment. He'd risk $1 if he thought the investment would be worth $5, and he was certain. Now, he might be wrong. If he's wrong, he can risk another $1, still make 4. He could be wrong 4 times out of 5 and still be okay.
And catch up, yeah.
But if you're trying to make 10% or 20% and you're wrong, you're going deeper and deeper in the hole. So you can't always find asymmetrical risk reward, but when you can, it's amazing. I'll give you a perfect example. I interviewed this guy, Kyle Bass. We're here in Texas right now. He lives here. Kyle, in 2008, the worst economic time in 80 years, he turned $30 million into $2 billion in less than 2 years. How did he do it? He did asymmetrical risk reward. He figured out that real estate, that everybody thought was going to keep going up, he figured, no, we're hitting the edge, and he found a way to invest where his risk level was so low, because everybody thought this is going to go on forever, that he could be wrong 13 times and still make money. Well, he wasn't wrong 13 times since he made $2 billion. And I said, how would you explain this to someone who's not financially, they've not spent time in the financial world? He goes, Tony, I can't believe you're saying this. I've been thinking about how to teach this to my kids. So he said, I came up with an idea and I've now executed it. You couldn't be asking me to sit a better time. I said, well, what'd you do? He said, I took my kids and I said, here's what we're going to do. We want to have the least risk with the most upside. So he said, I spent almost a year asking one question. Where's their investment? You'll like this. Where's their investment in the world where there's no downside and I'm guaranteed a significant upside from the very first day? Now, most people would say, you're stupid. You're an idiot to ask that question. There's no such thing. Any sophisticated person would say that. But he's very sophisticated, and he said, I ask questions no one else asks. That's why I get answers no one else gets. And after almost a year, he figured it out. He goes, nickels. I said, nickels? He said, yes. I'm going to buy millions of dollars worth of nickels and show my kids what I mean. I said, explain. He goes, Tony, a nickel's worth a nickel. When I invest it, it'll never be worth less than a nickel. I said, okay. He goes, it costs 11 cents for the government to make a nickel. That's how screwed up our government is. He said, pennies used to be made of copper. There's almost no copper anymore.
Yeah.
Because it costs more for the copper than the penny.
Yeah.
So they've been doing this for years. They're going to have to adjust the nickels. If you buy pennies that were still copper, regardless of the copper content, they're worth 100% more than they were before, or 300% more than they were before. He goes, here, the melt value of nickel, if I just melted them, he said, I make a 30% return on that moment. I said, but you can't melt money, it's illegal. He goes, yeah, I know that's what they say. He said, but I don't
How do you make that $2 billion, my man?
He goes, let me explain something to you. I don't have to melt it. He said, because the minute they make that change, he said, the value of my nickels that are old nickels will go through the roof. They won't be 30%. So he said, on day one, they're already worth 30% more. I mean, a 30% return, and I can never lose money because they're always worth a nickel. He literally went to the Federal Reserve and tried to buy as many nickels as he could. I can't remember how many millions of nickels he bought. He took his kids with him, truck full of nickels, and they loaded up this big storage facility with all these nickels. And he goes, if I could push one button and turn all my money into nickels, I'd do it tomorrow. Where else are you going to get a 30% return and have no downside ever? That's asymmetrical risk reward. I'll give you one more quick example.
He just sat around at his house. How much weed does this guy smoke, huh? He's like, it's nickels. Who the fuck even finds that out, bro? How did he find out that?
Because he asked the right questions.
Okay,
right?
fair enough.
New questions, new answers, right? I always tell people better questions give you better answers, right? But I'll give you one more example. Richard Branson. I know Richard, and he's an amazing guy, and he's a go-getter guy. And most people look at Richard and go, this guy's a giant risk taker. He is with his life, not with his investments. He'll get on a plane, a train, a helicopter, a balloon. He'll go to space and take risks of his life. But whenever he does investment, he's like, whoa, what's the downside? How do we protect against the downside? So I'll give you a perfect example how brilliant he is, why he's so successful. Asymmetrical risk reward. He decides he's going to compete with British Airways. He's going to start an airway from scratch and compete with British Airways, this giant government-driven company. He's got to buy all these Boeing jets, hundreds of millions of dollars of jets. What if he fails? He could lose everything he's ever earned. So guess what he did? He negotiated with Boeing for over a year till he got them to agree that he'd buy all these planes, But after a year, if he wasn't profitable, he could give all the planes back with no cost to him, no loss to him, and no loss to his credit. So guess how unstressed he is going to build that business? No downside, only upside, and he built Virgin Air that way. So it's a really amazing way of looking at things. It's not always easy. So the question you're going to be asking yourself is like, okay, is there a magic asset allocation formula that the most successful people use? And the answer is yes. That's what I taught in this book, right? The Holy Grail of Investing. And the second question you might ask is, okay, is there a way I can get more asymmetrical risk reward? The answer is yes. The fourth thing they all talk about, by the way, is diversification. And can I get diversified? Because it's the only free lunch. Meaning you want to diversify different, you don't want everything in Apple or everything in stocks or everything in bonds or everything in one piece of real estate. Or you need diversification because all assets at some point, Ray Dalio, the smartest, and the most successful hedge fund manager in history, he manages $195 billion. He told me once when I first met him, he said, Tony, whatever you love as an investment, say you grew up and your family flipped houses, you were really poor, and you fixed them a little and got the rats out and cleaned up and you want to do real estate the rest of your life. Or someone gave you a stock when you were a kid, a stock of IBM, and it grew, and so you got hooked on doing stocks. Whatever it is that you like, someday that asset that's always done well for you is going to lose 50 to 70% like that. Every asset class has done it. He said, so that's why you have to diversify. You can't get caught up in only what you know. So those four were pretty amazing. While I was writing that second book, and I was going through all this with these guys, which is why I wrote this final book, is I talked to Ray Dalio. This guy, he manages China's money. I mean, this is how big he is. He's unbelievable. In 2008, I forget what the drop was. I think it was 34% or 36% drop in the market. He was up 8%. I mean, it's just so smart, it's unbelievable, right? He called the whole thing in advance. So Ray's become a friend. And in the early days, when I first met 12, 13 years ago, I said, okay, after I prepared for an interview with him for 12 hours for what was supposed to be a half-hour interview. It was what we've done here. I don't know how many hours we've been here, but it went 3 hours, right?
Oh, 2.5.
And so
I've been wanting to pee for 30. I'm I'm not getting up. I'll pee in my pants right here.
I'll finish the thought. You can go pee. But the interesting thing was we pitched and catch because I really understood, right? So he enjoyed that. Like you and I talking, there was this connection, right? So after that time, my last question was okay, out of everything you taught me and shared with me, if there's one principle that would be the most important principle investing that you've learned in 40 years of investing, it's made you successful, what is the single most important principle? And he said, Tony, I have struggled for 12 years to answer that question for myself, and I have the answer. I call it the Holy Grail of Investing. That's the title of the book because it's from him.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. And I said, I'm leaning forward. Okay, what is it? And so I'll explain. He said, Tony, in order for, so many people are behind. A lot of your listeners or viewers are probably not where they want to be financially, or they don't have a plan even, or they're on the plan, but it's not going as fast as they want, right?
Yeah.
The only way to get your goals faster, besides putting more money in investments, is get better returns. Well, to get better returns, you got to take more what?
Risks.
And as you take more risk, you can then lose what you got and could be backwards. You can lose it all. And that's usually what happens to people. He said, so the secret to all of this, why do you have asset allocation? Why do you try to do asymmetrical risk reward? You're trying to have the least risk possible with the most upside. I've discovered a mathematical formula that I use, and it works like clockwork. He told me right there. He said, if you can find 8 to 12 uncorrelated investments, or what does uncorrelated mean?
Not connected?
Right? Some investments, if you buy technology stocks, they all tend to move up and move down pretty much the same. Some may do a little better, but they do it pretty much in unison. They're correlated. If you think about when the market's going well, when the economy's going well, people want to invest in stocks because they tend to grow. When it's not going well, they tend to want to have bonds because they're more safe and they're going to protect them during that time because they're not usually correlated. Well, they aren't usually, but in 2020, they both went down.
Yeah.
In 2008, they both went down, right? And if you go to your broker, you go, I don't know. I mean, they're never correlated. Yes, they are. They're always correlated this way. And that's a deeper discussion that Ray explained to me how. But he goes, here's the secret. If you can find 8 to 12 things you really believe in, you think are good, and they're not correlated or weakly correlated, you can reduce your risk 80% and potentially increase your upside, but have the same upside. He goes, now you can go faster. And I was like, wow. And I said, really? He goes, really? And she showed me the math.
Why though? Why? Is it because when one goes up, another goes down?
No, it's the fact that they're not correlated if you only have one investment and it has a certain amount of return and risk, you're at high risk. But as you get more and more investments at that level and they're not tied together, if one goes down, another one tends to go up. It gives you that balance. I'm oversimplifying it.
But why is it 80%?
I explained in the book. You got to look at the math of you want to. Not everybody wants to go to the math. All they need to know is
Get
the formula.
the book.
No, I'm not doing it for that reason.
No, I'm just joking.
But by the way, the book, 100% of the book, like all 4 of my last books, all #1 bestsellers, I give 100% of the money to Feeding America. This one's true too. I don't make any money off the book. It's just, while you're helping yourself, you're helping people that are starving. So anyway, long story short, you don't know everything about how your car, but you know how to drive it. So if you understand the principle, you can drive it. But here's the problem. I was like, wow, this is brilliant. So I now try to find uncorrelated investments, 8 to 12, and it's not easy. The world is so tied together today. And so I was getting a little frustrated, and I started saying, okay, I know why I'm frustrated, because I'm only looking at public stocks. I'm looking at bonds. I'm looking at public real estate, like REITs. But the guys that make the most money on earth and do it faster are the people that do private equity, private credit, and private real estate. But that's not most people's investments. So I went on the journey to start digging underneath there, and I found a couple things that blew my mind. Here's the first one. For the last 35 years, private equity has done better than every stock market in the world for 35 years. So I'll give you one example. People in America usually have heard of the S&P 500. It's an index of the top 500 companies.
It's like a very safe thing to put your money in because...
Yeah, because you got some of the best companies picked. However, and it's been a great investment over the last 35 years, overall, it's averaged a 9.2% compounded return, which means not every year, but that's the average. And that means, like, if you're getting a 5% return, it takes 14 and a half years to get your money to double.
Yeah.
If you're getting a 9% return, it only takes 8 years. So your lifetime, you're going to grow much more rapidly. But during that same time, if you were in basic private equity, in this book, I interviewed 13 of the biggest players in the world who have the greatest returns. In other words, these guys have all averaged 20% or more per year for decades. One guy in this group has done 36% compounded per year for 26 years. These are gigantic. These are the masters of the universe. If you go to the Fortune 400, you say, what industry has the most billionaires? People tell me it's tech. It's not tech. Real estate. It's not real estate. It's financial services, but it's not hedge funds. It's private equity. Here's why. Private equity is average private equity, not these guys, it's averaged 14.2%. Well, what does that mean? So there are a lot of numbers here. I'll make it simple for you. It means you're getting 50% greater returns every year compounded. So what that means is if you put $1 million in the S&P 500, say 35 years ago and forgot about it, it's worth $26 million today without you doing anything. But if you took the same $1 million and put it in private equity, it's worth $139 million. It's the same time, it's the same money, but such a radical. And so when I told you about asset allocation, the current numbers show that ultra high net worth people have 46% of their money in private equity, private assets, private credit. They only have 29% in the public markets. And there's a reason. There used to be 8,000 stocks, different companies. Now there's 3,700, and the same number of people going after them. And the Russell, you got 50% of that index that doesn't make money. They're betting on the future for where it's going to go. These guys are not trying to buy a stock at the right time. Think about this. The majority of businesses in the world and in this country that are 100 million or more are private, right? You're talking about, the middle market, just companies that are 100 million to 3 billion is 200,000 companies, not 3,700. So they go find these companies, and their genius is at adding value. They take a company and go, we're going to grow this, a bad part of it, and we're going to grow this business. We're going to put in a new CEO, or we're going to put in a new marketing system, or we're going to put in new technology or AI, or we're going to change the accounting system. And they're experts at growing these businesses. They grow them in the way you make money in a business. You sell it for a multiple of its earnings or its revenues, and they sell it to a bigger company, or they take it public. Their track record is insane. The returns, that's why the smart money has a good portion of their money here. Not all, because you still need liquidity. The advantage these private equity people have is if you give them some of your money, they tie it up for 5 years, and you're willing to do it because you're getting so much better returns.
Yeah.
So you don't put all your money there, obviously. But that also allows them, if the market goes down, they buy stuff. They don't have to sell. They're not tied to the ups and downs. And if it's going really well, they can sell. And they have time to develop these companies and make it happen. So their track record is mind-boggling. So the only problem is to get into these best firms is like trying to buy a Ferrari SP3 that's $4 million before they even bring it out. They're all pre-sold. Right?
It's hard to get your hands on.
You can't get. You could go to a club and there's the velvet rope, and you can have all the money in the world, but if you don't know the right people, you're not attractive enough. You're not getting in that club. Right? It's just how it works. Right?
So how do the people that are getting your book get into the relationships that you have?
That's what I show you. It's pretty exciting. So even I had difficulty, and I have got a certain reputation, a certain brand. So I would get into some of these, but I get these little pieces because everybody wants it, right? And it's gone. It's pre-sold. So one day I'm sitting down with one of Paul Tudor Jones's former partners, a good friend of mine. He's a very wealthy, brilliant guy. And I was lamenting on, man, private equity is so great, but it's so hard to get in the best ones. And I got in, but little chunks, not the volume I'd want to be in for and get the kind of returns. And he says, Tony, you've done so much for my life. I'm gonna clue you into something. He said, I'll tell you where I put most of my money. This guy's brilliant, so I'm leaning in again.
Yeah, I just leaned in. I don't know if you saw that, but I leaned in. Because I was like, shit, dog, I got some money I want to invest in.
So I said, what is it? He goes, Tony, there's this firm in Houston, Texas. That's why I'm here for this meeting. And he said, Houston, Texas? Because usually when somebody's talking finance, they go Singapore, London, Connecticut, New York, right? Texas. He goes, yeah, these guys are off the beaten path, but they've done something amazing. I said, what is it? He goes, you're trying to get in to invest in one of those funds. The companies that own those funds have multiple funds. They've done years in the past. They keep building new funds. You're just trying to get in one. And when you invest in a fund like that, they call you a limited partner. That's the name they use for investors. If you're an owner of the firm, you're the general partner, right? He goes, what if I told you that you don't have to get in the funds, that I've got a way you could get in and own a piece of the firms and get everything they make off of it and get all the funds? I said, what? He goes, yes, you can buy a slice of them if you know the right people in the right way. I said, you got to clue me in. He goes, here's the best part. What do you want in a business? If you have a business, you want income. You want income you can count on. You know how these guys make money? Why they're the masters of the universe, the most billionaires of any categories, these guys? They tie your money in for 5 years. They charge you 2% of your money every year, no matter what, whether they make you money or not. But people are willing to do it because they make them usually a lot more than that, right? So they're guaranteed, if they have $1 billion fund, they're guaranteed $100 million in predictable income for the next 5 years, right? Plus, they get 20% of what they do on the upside. So if they grow their fund from $1 billion to $2 billion, they're gonna get 20% of that second billion. They make another $200 million. $100 million in fees, $200 million for the growth, and that's not uncommon. They make $300 million on $1 billion. Now, these firms I interviewed here are $20 billion, $30 billion, $100 billion firms, and they're producing returns that are just ridiculous and have done it decade after decade. I own those firms now. I own a piece of them. I get the 2 and 20 myself, besides being in those firms. So I get diversification from all the best firms out there. They're in different industries. Like one guy, his specialty is SaaS for business, right? Software as a service. He knows that business better than anybody. His name's Robert Smith. It's a company called Vista. $100 billion fund. Man started with absolutely nothing. One of the most successful human beings in business in the world, one of the smartest human beings. He knows how to take anybody in that business, and he's got a system. He grows it, expands it, builds it up, sells it for a huge return, goes to the next one. Some do it with the government, around technology. Some do it in, let's say, water. Some do it in real estate. Some do it with private credit. So I have 65 firms now of the biggest in the world that I own a piece of each of them, and I get 2 and 20 on all those. So I have a cash flow of about 10%. It can go 7 to 10%. And I've got giant upside as the assets grow as well. It's one of my favorite investments on earth. I'll tell you another one they've got.
Do you need to have a lot of liquid to do something?
I left out that. I'm so glad you asked that. So the biggest problem why I didn't write the book initially, even after I figured this out, is I can help my wealthy friends, but what about the average person? The government has this weird thing where they literally regulate so that only wealthy people have the very best opportunities. And the way they do that is they have classifications of your level of sophistication, and they base it on something arbitrary, how much income or net worth you have. You could inherit money, it doesn't mean you're a sophisticated investor.
Yeah.
You could be good at business and sell a business, doesn't mean you're a sophisticated investor, but they call you an accredited investor, and you can only use investments, some of them, if you're an accredited investor, which means you have $1 million net worth, not counting your house, and or you make $200,000 a year, okay? Then you're qualified. Guess what they did? And there's a level above that called qualified purchaser. You have to have $5 million, and that you can count your business, but not your home. And they are at different levels. So there's these arbitrary things where the best opportunities the average person can't do. So here's why I wrote the book. Congress just passed the law, the House just passed the law, where they agreed, this is stupid. Everybody should have access as long as they know what they're getting into. So they're creating it, the House passed it, Senate is taking it up. It was bipartisan, so it's already been passed on one. It looks like it'll be passed on the other. You'll be able to take a test, and after you take the test, you're an accredited investor. You don't need $1 million net worth. You don't make $200,000 a year. Now you got access to these things. It's pretty wild. It's how it should have been.
That's
forever.
actually crazy that the timing of the guy who's trying to teach his son, my man. I was prepped. I was teeing you up for it.
You don't need to tee me up. I know.
This is incredible. In fact, that book is mine now. I'm taking that home.
Yeah, I'll leave it for you. You won't be able to put it down because it's easy to read. The first half of the book, I give you all these different industries. So let me give you another one. Like a lot of people, they want to have bonds for security. So think about it. Bonds have been worthless in terms of a return for decades, right?
Yeah.
2021, just a few years ago, you're getting 1% and 2% on the bonds, right? But one set of bonds took off for a while, and it was junk bonds. They call them high yield bonds. They're junk bonds. It means the companies are really risky, and they were paying only 3.9%, but compared to 1 or 2%, that sounded like a lot. And the bond market for junk bonds exploded, and then it crashed, of course. While they were doing that, we got private credit. Now, what is private credit? Well, since 2008, the banks changed their lending rules. Companies that are 100 million to 3 billion, those middle market companies, they can't get money the loans they want. If you're Apple, you can get the loan. You don't even need it at Apple, right? But you're those companies, which is most of the market, 200,000 companies here. They need money to survive. So these private equity guys who are really smart said, we'll be your bank, we'll loan your money, but they vet them really well. They have a 1% failure rate across on average. Any bank would die for that. And they stay with these people and keep loaning to them. But watch this. When people are getting 3.9 and taking huge risks, I was getting 9% on private credit with less risk, just because I knew what it is. And now I own those firms, and we own those firms, our teams, so we get the 2 and 20 on those. And by the way, if you had a mortgage and it was a fixed rate mortgage at 3%, and the interest rates jumped to 7%, you're a pretty happy camper. You did that. Good.
You know, my dad fought me on that. I was like, Dad, everybody's just doing it right now. And he goes, shut up. And he's like, shut up. And literally, I swear to God, when everything skyrocketed, Tony, I wouldn't have been able to afford my house.
Oh, it would be triple the amount you're paying right now, basically.
I would have not. I would have literally lost my house if I was not listening to my father.
Well, I'm so glad. I have a lot of properties, and I went and refinanced them all also and kept them at 3% as well. I knew it was coming. I didn't know it was this high, but I knew it was going to go up. It was ridiculous, so I did it too. So it makes life so much easier. But watch this, though. You have a fixed rate, you're fine. If you had a floating rate, you're paying 2.5 times the same house. And many people can't do that. Well, in business loans, they're floating rates. So money was being loaned in those days, maybe 5 or 6%. But guess what? When the rates went up, it's the same loan. And by the way, we're already making double or triple than what people are making on bonds. But now, when the interest rates went up, we're now getting 12 and 13% on the exact same loans. We have no more risk, and the profitability is through the roof, and I'm getting the 2 and 20. And there's some of the best firms in the world. And I interview the best firms here to give you an idea.
So you truly just found the master of it, and instead of like holding it for yourself for like a couple of years, transferring all your money, building it up, you were like, oh, I got to tell everybody about this.
I got to tell everybody. I was telling all of my friends who had money, but it's like most people are trying to get there faster, and the tools they have are very limited, right? Stocks, bonds, REITs, maybe your own house, right? But those are not the kinds of returns that are available here with less risk in most cases. Not all, but most cases, and you want to get with the best. So, and when you're the house, think about this. You could be the poker player, or you can be the house.
Yeah.
These guys are the house.
Yeah.
Right? So you want to be the person trying to get a loan, you want to be a person giving the loans. You know? So it's very different. I'll give you one more that's just fun. So when I was a kid, my fourth father was a semi-pro baseball player. And so I got to start playing baseball a little bit later because this is my fourth father. We didn't have any money. I couldn't pay for going to Little League and things like that, but he insisted, and I got to do it and loved it. But I got started late, and I wasn't that skilled. By the time I got to high school, I realized I'm not going to be a professional baseball player. So I got to figure out what I'm going to do. I'm maybe a sportscaster, sports writer. I started writing for a paper, doing different things. But the interesting thing was I would go to LA Dodger Stadium maybe once or twice in a year, and I would buy the cheapest ticket in right field at the top in the bleed seats and bleed Dodger blue. I mean, I just love baseball, love sports. And so I promised myself someday I'm gonna do well enough, I'm gonna own a sports team. It seemed like totally absurd. And then, about, 6, 7 years ago, I finally had accumulated enough assets that I could actually do that. Now, it's a lot of money, and they put a microscope to you. You can't believe what you go through to qualify to become an owner. Not a single owner, just owner a part of it. And so I helped build the LAFC football club. I got to partner with my friend Peter Guber and a bunch of other brilliant people. I played a small role, but it was so fun. And then I moved to Florida, and I'm never there for the games, but we won a championship. It was a blast, right? So I was like, I want to build some more sports teams. So I bought an esports team that's done really well, won some championships. And then I was like, God, it would be nice to own all these other sports. It'd be so much fun. And then the rules changed about 3 years ago. And the NFL's not done it, but Major League Baseball, the NBA, Major League Soccer, and Major League Hockey have all changed the rules where a small number of firms who don't use leverage, so it's not spooky, are able to buy pieces of these businesses. Now, why would you want to own a part of a sports team other than the fun of it? Well, it's not correlated to the stock market or to the bond market. It's completely different. You own a monopoly in your city. No one can compete with you. You have the only exclusive right in that city. You have customers called fanatics. That's what fan means. Yeah. They're fanatics, multi-generational. And they used to make money by putting butts in seats. And when inflation happens, they charge more for the hot dog and people pay it. But now they're media enterprises and they're real estate enterprises. They buy all the real estate around it. The media rights, because of cutting cords. Of the 100 top shows last year, 92 were sporting events. Why? Because cord cutting, those are the only people that are going to watch a commercial. The Super Bowl is the most exaggerated example, right? So advertisers want to go there. So I'll give you an example. Peter Guber, a dear friend of mine, partner in some of these businesses. We own a piece of the LAFC together. I own a piece of the Warriors, Golden State Warriors with him, the LA Dodgers with him. He bought the Dodgers several years ago with a group of friends, Magic Johnson, some really brilliant people. He paid $2 billion for the Dodgers. No one had paid $1 billion for a baseball team. Everybody in the media went crazy. They're insane. They're going to lose money. The most anybody paid was $800 million for a baseball team. And they all thought, the Dodgers are a great franchise. They're worth $1 billion, but they're not worth $2 billion.
Yeah, right? That's a lot more.
So I go to Peter, who's got 52 Academy Awards. He's been the chairman of Sony Columbia TriStar, teaches at UCLA, a regent for the UC system, one of the smartest human beings I know. And I said, Peter, I know you're no idiot. Everybody's saying you're an idiot to pay $2 billion. How are you going to do it? What do you know they don't know? He says, Tony, I like cliffhangers. I will make an announcement on Tuesday. Once you hear it, come over and we'll laugh and celebrate together. Tuesday announced he sold the local TV rights for $7 billion and made $5 billion on the spot. That doesn't count all the other revenues that come from the sport. Like that. I'll give you another example. By the way, when you own NBA, Major League Baseball, you get an equal cut of all the national advertising. If you're the smallest, cheapest baseball team or NBA team, or the best, doesn't matter. But the local rights you keep. So he sold the local rights. He knew what he's going to do. $2 billion is no problem. I'm going to make $5 billion net.
Oh, so while everybody was laughing at him, he goes, we'll see who's laughing.
Exactly right, he did it. So I'll give you an example. Michael Jordan, he bought the Charlotte Hornets, got the name back to the Hornets. He bought him for $275 million about 11 and a half years ago, almost 12 years ago. He just sold, we were one of the groups that bought, a whole group of bought, for $3 billion in 11 years. The average NBA team has gone up over 1,000% over the last 20 years, to give you an idea. And these are big numbers to give you a perspective. If you just look at Major League Baseball, Major League Soccer, the NBA, and hockey, and you take a look at that and you go, what have they produced if you put them in an amalgam? The answer is 18% compounded for the last 10 years. The stock market's done 11%, and they're not correlated. So it's one of your 8 to 12 that gives you 80% less risk and a greater return and fun. You get to be an owner, get to do these things. So now we're involved with, we own pieces of now of everybody from, let's say, the Warriors to the Utah Jazz, from the Dodgers to the Red Sox, pieces of both of them. the Pittsburgh Penguins. I mean, I go on and on and on, and it's a blast. It's fun. It's a great. It's part of our culture. It's fun to do, and you get these unbelievable returns, and people can do it with a little tiny piece now. They're a part of a group that does that. So there's so many ways that people don't know about. That's why I wrote this book, The Holy Grail of Investing, because it'll open up a whole new universe to people, what's possible. And the second half of the book is interviews with the 13 biggest guys in the world, where I interview how they think about it, how they make investments, what they do. And you learn things about, like, even of a small business, like how they grow businesses is fascinating. So that's what the book's all about. And again, 100% of it's being donated, to Feeding America.
What the hell am I supposed to say to that, dude?
And you said it earlier. You can go to the Holy Grail of Investing, theholygrailofinvesting.com. And if you want, you can listen to the first chapter on audio for free. Order the book.
Both links in the bio.
You got it.
In the description. I just have one last question for you.
Sure.
Will you call me when you have the next great idea before you write a book about it? I just want to be a part of it, Tony. I just want to be a part of it. It's a pleasure, man.
It's been a great conversation. I thought we were going to talk for an hour. We talked for 2.5 or 3, but I've loved it.
It's been almost 3 hours, and I've been dreaming about this since Billy and I even exchanged numbers years ago. Thank you for taking the time. I really appreciate it. You're a man I look up to, literally. And spiritually. Thank you so much. And I pray that this opens up a lot of people's hearts and minds. And,
Me too.
And God willing, the next time we chat, I'll be at a different point in my life and we could, iron sharpens iron. But
Great.
I'll be chasing that tail, man. I'm on it, dude. I'm trying to be the next Tony, dude. Thank you so much,
You'll be
bro.
the best you. That's even better. Thank you so much.
No. I'm coming for you, Tony. I'm trying to be the next Tony.
God bless.